Another Wunderbar Wednesday is here, and we're ushering you right into it. It's a big day, or should I say, Budget Reconciliation Day. Yes, today that's going to be on our chopping board as well. But my name is Benjamin Akakwo, and I welcome you on behalf of the team to the AM show. Now, what can you expect? I'll be serving you the news, together with a business update shortly, followed by the news review. The guests who join us, Dr. Kwame Asante. He is a political scientist and head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. To join him, we have Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He's a senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. And then we get into our big stories. Now, what can you expect? Of course, we're going to be talking about the economy, the budget. It's a troubling economy, but we will fix it, according to Finance Minister Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson on the state of Ghana's economy as he presented his maiden budget for 2025, but not without backlash from the opposition NPP, describing the budget as one of lamentations and that it was uninspiring. We're going to unpack the issues. Who is telling us the truth? Is this the real state of affairs? He highlighted in the 2025 budget that government was set to abolish some 5 taxes, including the infamous e-levy and betting taxes, under a certificate of urgency. This morning, we'll unpack all of those issues right here on the AM show. You want to stick and stay with us? Join us with your thoughts on social media. And when we activate the phone lines, be one of those to call. On that note, stick and stay with us. There's more coming your way via the news. Welcome to the news. Let's get into our first story now. Finance Minister Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson has formally announced the abolition of a raft of taxes, including the controversial electronic transactions e-levy, betting tax, and emissions levy. Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson insists no new taxes will be introduced in place of these taxes, but a rationalization of the existing tax refund system will plug the holes the cancellation of taxes will bring about. Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Kweku Asante reports on those issues.
The much-anticipated first budget of John Dramani Mahama has been presented to Parliament. The Finance Minister, Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson, had the authority of the President to deliver the first budget of his second term following that decisive victory in 2024. Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson started by painting a picture of the economy that the NDC inherited from the NPP.
Mr. Speaker, hands on heart, we inherited an economy in deep crisis. Mr. Speaker, an economy hard hit with debt and beset by other fiscal challenges, such as large accumulation of MDRS, energy sector, shortfalls, and financial sector payments.
He went on to provide some updates in terms of what exactly the government is doing to turn things around.
Rationalizing government expenditure and eliminating wasteful expenditures. Optimizing domestic revenue mobilization through broadening of tax base, increased non-tax revenue collection, adopting enhanced tax compliance measures, and modernizing the tax administration through digital technology. Mr. Speaker, we will also increase the share of domestic expenditure to spur economic growth and job creation.
Then came the big news. Dr. Cassiel Ato-Forson has abolished a number of taxes, including the controversial e-levy and the betting tax.
Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 10% withholding tax on betting. We will abolish the electronic transfer levy, e-levy of 1%. We will abolish the emission levy, otherwise as in Wusie tax. We will abolish the VAT on motor vehicle insurance policy. Mr. Speaker, we will abolish the 1.5% withholding tax on unprocessed gold by small-scale miners. Mr. Speaker, the removal of these taxes will ease the burden on households.
Dr. Cassie Latofosin says the government has what it takes to plug the hole that will be created by the abolishment of these taxes.
Government will work with the stakeholders, including the private sector, to roll out a technology-driven solution to reintroduce road tolls this year as part of the big push. Right, Honorable Speaker, we will also strengthen the legal and regulatory regime for non-tax revenue and enforce the framework to improve service delivery. This will be achieved through the introduction of an overarching non-tax revenue legislation, amendment of existing relevant laws, and the development of a national non-tax revenue strategy and policy. The Speaker, as part of the reforms to improve other non-tax revenue streams, government will explore the operationalization of a regulatory framework for collection, management, and reporting of property rates consistent with our medium-term revenue strategy, 2024 to 2027.
Dr. Cassie Latofosin proceeds to announce a number of interventions and funding in the 2025 budget.
We will provide a cedi equivalent of $279 million as a revolving fund for the Ghana Gold Board to be able to purchase and export at least 3 tons of gold per week from small-scale miners. An amount of 499.8 million Ghana cedis has been allocated for the non-academic fee policy for all first-year students in public sector institutions under the No Fee Stress initiative. We have allocated an amount of 292.4 million Ghana cedis to commence the distribution of free sanitary pads to female students in primary and secondary schools. The overarching concern about free secondary education has been its quality and the absence of dedicated sources of financing. His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama has resolved it. Mr. Speaker, let me take this again. The overarching concern about free secondary education has been its quality and the absence of a dedicated sources of funding. His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama has resolved the funding challenges by uncapping the GET fund.
In the coming days, Parliament will consider the estimates of the various ministries, departments, and agencies. The various committees of Parliament will handle all those estimates and present report to the House. It will be done side-by-side, a debate or commenting on the Finance Minister's budget presentation, which will ultimately culminate in the passage of the Appropriation Act that will lead to the total passage of the 2025 budget. Reporting for Joy News, Kweku Asante, Parliament House, Accra.
Meanwhile, Minority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin described the budget as an Azan budget.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon we have been presented with part 2 of the Lamentation series. The part 1, Mr. Speaker, the part 1 was Mahamanomics. The part 2 is Forcenomics. And it's very clear, Mr. Speaker, that under the economy that they complain about, the growth was 5.7%. And under the research economy, the growth is rather going down.
But his colleague, the Majority Leader, Mahama Ayariga, fired back. He insisted yesterday's presentation was filled with hope and that it would inspire the growth of Ghana's economy and lift the poor out of poverty.
Mr. Speaker, this clearly is a budget of a government and a party that keeps its promises. Almost every promise that was made by John Dramani Mahama is being fulfilled in less than 120 days. This budget is a budget for Makola women. This budget is a budget for assemblymen. This budget is a budget for girls. Because the certificate part is for the female students. That's why I said girls. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget for school children. They will now get the set of textbooks that they need to study. And peace of mind. Mr. Speaker, this is a budget that delivers solid reforms. And this is a budget that is moving our growth from Galamsey growth to real growth.
Well, some Ghanaians out there have also been reacting to the budget, particularly the scrapping of taxes.
Actually, we have a second independent Ghana for so many years. Assembly members omunya pay, but budget we who say assembly members after assembly members ka and betting tax and e-levy COVID tax in Yamana ya yini nyina fio afina Ghana ye ba be di year Ghana say and a 24-hour economy na mama diaba no me sure say ebe bua youth for nyina mama wa ya de pa yankopon shira no.
The e-levy they have removed. For that, I'm 100% with them that they have removed the e-levy. The taxes on our importing goods, that's the duties and the tax actually. I've not heard anything serious about that. And that one is helping the nation a lot, because if that tax still remains the same, we will push the final cost that we will bear to the final consumer, and the final consumers too will suffer more than us.
Me ade ba ko we ye free we me dey sa COVID tax no. Sa COVID tax no dey we ye free we dey ene sa e-levy no. By betting tax no dey at least na so ni ko te so.
Ebe mu na wo be ko.
Madam. Oh, unim scan microphone wo bet mu.
Now, despite advice from economists against scrapping the betting tax, the government has gone ahead with its removal. Now, while some young people celebrate the decision as a relief, others worry about potential future taxes or regulations that could replace it.
Actually, we have.
Oh, it's a good news for Ghanaians, simply because all young men have been betting, even the older people have been betting, due to the hardships we are facing at the moment. So it's a good news for us. Those 10% being removed from the tax that you win has been costing us a lot due to the hardships.
When last did you win?
Oh, I won about 2 months ago.
Was it like how much?
It's about 5,000.
Wow, so you had to pay government 10% of the 5?
Yeah. Which is costing us a lot. So this time, most people have not been betting. So once the government has announced that, the present NDC government has announced that he has removed the tax, it's a good news to young men.
We want to say because first, you travel to no one here. Intina, impo kakrebenyano. It me in a paper. I see I say, your coins have been put as a baby free sports won't only 10% free mintinema. It me for baby uncle a bet accounts woman to me in cabindi. It is a bet no. It me can say first no. And it is all my free
So he's very excited. He says that previously, because of the betting tax, they end up spending very little money on stakes because government would then have to take out 10%. But now they're very excited that government have announced they are scrapping the betting tax.
In our next story, a 24-year-old mobile money vendor known as Junior has been found murdered in his apartment at Kwadaso in the Ashanti region. His assailants, who remain unknown, allegedly fled with an undisclosed sum of money. The victim, who operated at the Kwadaso Onion Market, was discovered in a pool of blood. Clinton Yeboah reports.
Eyewitnesses claim the deceased returned home Saturday night with a substantial amount of money which they suspect might have exposed him to the attack. His door was locked from outside and I thought he had gone to work. But later I realized a screeching scent which was suspicious. So I got closer and realized his fan was also on. So I filed a case with the police, came around to find they have slit his throat. The police has launched an investigation into the matter, but no arrest has been made. Last month, a 27-year-old Momo vendor, Patricia Nimako, was also shot dead at Krofrom in Kumasi. The suspected armed robbers bolted with an amount of 10,000 Ghana cedis and mobile phones. The process of police investigations to apprehend the suspects remain unknown. For residents of Kwadaso, security beef up in the community will help ease their state of fear. We live in fear. The police should intensify their patrols around here and protect us. For Joy News, my name is Clinton Yeboah.
Now, the former Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, Cecilia Abinadapa, has told an Accra High Court that her domestic workers stole a total of $410,000, 300,000 euros, and 350,000 cedis from her storage room over time. She also reported the theft of $53,000 worth of jewelry and other valuables she had kept for over 3 decades. The former minister was testifying for the first time in court. Latif Idrisu has more.
Husband of the former minister in May last year told the same court that he and his wife started storing money in their storage room some 20 years ago. The former minister, who was testifying in court for the first time, said police investigators had told her that her stolen monies had been distributed to different persons at different locations. First of all, she told the court that when the first incident happened, she reported it to the police. At the time she lodged that complaint at the police station, she was still serving as minister in charge of sanitation. And subsequently, the theft continued, and then she yet again reported the matter to the police again. It was on the second report, if you like, that escalated the matter, which is now here at the court. Madam Cecilia Dapa told the court that the accused persons stole 12 of my neck chains valued at $24,000 US. Again, the accused persons, according to Madam Cecilia Dapa, stole my gold bangles valued at $14,000. Again, Madam Cecilia Dapa told the court that the accused persons, quote, stole my gold earrings valued at 15,000 United States dollars. The accused persons, according to Madam Cecilia Dapa, stole 300,000 euros of her hard-earned cash, 300,000 euros. Madam Dapa also told the court that they stole 200,000 United States dollars from her. In a separate incident, they stole 210,000 United States dollars. And then there was also the Ghana cedis. That was 300,000 Ghana cedis and then 50,000 Ghana cedis. These are the valuables that Madam Cecilia Dapa has told the court today that these suspects stole from their home at here in Accra from the High Court complex. This is Latif Idris reporting for Joy News.
Now, the Central Regional Minister, Ekopinyin Eduamwa Archery, has paid a visit to the Central Regional Police Headquarters to interact with the officers. During his visit, the regional minister advised the officers to be firm and transparent in their responsibilities and not allow their positions to be undermined by politicians. Abigail Nkrumah Essel has more in this report.
The Central Regional Police Commander, DCOP Kofi Edu, during the minister's visit, provided an overview of the strength and commitment of the regional police force.
Our overall strength stands at 1,317. Honorable Minister, as I always maintain, Central Region is always peaceful and will continue to be peaceful because the region is blessed with committed officers at all levels, ensuring effective day-to-day police activities in their respective jurisdictions. Our major challenge in the region is rivalry chieftaincy disputes among the chiefs, especially when they are about celebrating their annual festivals. The command over the years has helped resolve some of the disputes anytime they are brought to our notice. And with you as chairman of the Regional Security Council, I advise you talk to the Traditional Council and also the Regional House of Chiefs to fast track in resolving chieftaincy disputes pending before them, early enough before their annual festivals begin this year, to enable us have peaceful celebrations across the region. My humble request.
Speaking to the officers, the Central Regional Minister, Ekopinyin Eduamwa Archery, advised the officers to not allow their position be undermined, as well as ensure their rights in all their dealings.
Politicians have come. They are gone. I'm here today. My time will come. But many of you have been in this business for more than 2 decades, 20, 30 years ago. And so you not sit there for a small politician to come and move you up and down. Stand on your ground. Be on your feet. Tell us the right thing to do. Tell us. Look into our face and tell us that, look, Honorable Minister, what you are saying is not correct. I cannot be part of it. And that is the only way, because you are here to check us. For me to get the work done, I should also remain as neutral as possible and be truthful. So while I expect a lot from you, I also think that you also expect a lot from me. Let's do this work together.
The regional minister also addressed accommodation challenges facing the police force in the region, pledging his commitment to finish uncompleted projects.
But for the issue of accommodation, I think that it's important we do something about it. At that time I was coming from Sopo, I saw a lot of structures. Even around here, there are a lot of uncompleted structures. I am in consultation to kind of halt initiating new projects and concentrate on existing ones so that we can finish them in time.
From Cape Coast, Abigail Nkrumah's report for Joy News.
Now, the Parent Teachers Association of the Kpando Senior High School has handed over 4 projects contributing to the infrastructure development of the school. The projects, which include a classroom block and a 2-unit staff bungalow, among others, were initiated to enhance the academic activities and performance of the students. There's more in this report.
The Kpando Senior High School, established about 70 years ago, has been struggling to meet accommodation needs of the school community. To help lessen the plight, the Parent Teacher Association initiated some projects with funding from the dues of members. 3 units of 2-bedroom apartments were constructed to accommodate teachers. Dr. Nicholas Darko is the PTA chairperson.
So we came into office, but we were not operating. And we couldn't tell parents to pay money. I see that was not enough. We wanted to move forward, then COVID-19 came. And I see that was not enough. Government agreed that PTA should operate, but there was confusion. And so we really had it tough. But through it all, I will say today we have been able to achieve certain things you will see and be happy about. We have achieved so many things. I have a list of 20 items, and that is not all. 20 things. So later I will mention it to you, but for now we want to be very brief. We have 4 important projects we want to commission in the name of PTA. You have done it, so clap for yourself. However, it took only 60% of us to support. 40% never participated, and it's a shame.
Phase 1 of a 12-unit classroom block initiated by the association has also been completed and in use. At the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the association also established a purified water production unit to serve the school and community. Proceeds from the unit are used to finance initiatives of the association, including employing casual workers to enhance staff strength. The headmaster, Charles Evans Apreku, lauded the contributions of the PTA to the development of the school.
So, kitchen and security, they have employed 13 supporting hand that PTA pays every month. Yeah, so I want to commend our PTA, Bando Senior High School PTA, and want to urge other schools that may have challenges with the PTA to come around to learn.
The PTA has other projects in the offing to make Bando Senior High School a school of choice. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News, Bando.
And on that educational infrastructure note, we segue right into our business update. We start on the front of the budget as economist Professor Patrick Esuming has welcomed the policy interventions and tax cuts outlined in the 2025 budget. But he says time will tell of their impact on the economy. Although he lauded the government's revenue and expenditure projections for the year, he believes the economy is not out of the woods yet. Professor Esuming has been reacting to the 2025 budget presentation in Parliament yesterday.
Now, I think, obviously, also within the context of the political campaign, the president and the government has been absolutely bent on making sure that the most visible and the most important elements of their campaign were fulfilled. And that's why we've seen a rollback of all those taxes that, were said. I think, in some sense, the finance minister also communicating that there's a way to do these cuts and then make up for them was also a good thing. At least it gives confidence that perhaps these cuts are here to stay. And then we also saw the number of other government programs that are meant to boost the real sector of the economy. I think that's where the action is. We have seen this before. I mean, having a fresh start and then reading a budget, scaling back some unpopular taxes. We did this, we saw this 8 years ago. I think exactly how these programs will boost the economy and make it more sustainable I think that's the most important thing. But I think as a first budget, it's gone very well.
Now, the managing director of the Ghana Stock Exchange, Abena Amoah, has emphasized the need for policy reforms to incorporate investment into the country's educational system, highlighting its importance in equipping young individuals for real-world economic participation. Helen Nakai Ai filed this report.
In commemoration of International Women's Day, the Ghana Stock Exchange brought together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and young women to discuss gender equality, empowerment, and financial inclusion under the theme Ring the Bell for All Women and Girls' Rights, Equality, and Empowerment. Speaking at the event, the managing director at the Ghana Stock Exchange, Abena Amoah, underscored the need for compulsory inclusion of investment education in schools to facilitate easy management of Finances.
We think that we need to start early, and that's why we think the biggest contribution we can make is if we make investment education part of compulsory programs at school. So working with Ministry of Education include financial education and literacy in primary schools through to tertiary, because every person, no matter what you do at the end of the day, you should be able to be educated to use the financial tools you have, to understand that if you want to start a business, it's better to register it, so that the percentage of women-run businesses that are registered and have formal structures around that improves.
She further emphasized the need for this celebration within the stock exchange market in cushioning sustainability.
Another platform we've done is also a sustainability segment of the market where companies can raise social bonds, green bonds, or gender bonds, which is debt financing that is cheaper than regular financing. And companies that have interest in investing in these areas can get cheaper financing by issuing these type of bonds.
It's a wrap for the news. Joining us presently for the news review, political scientist, head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asante. We also have Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. They will be with us presently. Well, thank you very much for staying, and I'm getting some very positive comments in the studio this morning. I'd like to thank my director, Yao Forsin, for making that possible with the background. Anyway, joining us for the news review this morning, we have our two guests, both of them academics at the University of Ghana. The first, Dr. Kwame Asante. He is a political scientist and also head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. The second, Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He's a senior lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Gentlemen, I'm watching. Dr. Mohammed, Sanazua. Okay, so I'll get to Dr. Mohammed in a bit, but I have Dr. Asante with me. Doc, so here we are. Yes, it's another day. I don't know whether you would want to use your 1 or 2 minutes to take a stab at the budget, because eventually we'll get into that. But what's on your mind this morning, Doc?
Yes, I think my comment will come from what I have gleaned from the budget. And it's about government effort to, as it were, roll out serious agri projects that will create jobs and also give us food and the rest of them. Beautiful idea. But I was surprised. I did not read much or anything about irrigation that needs to be done in the north, and specifically making or letting our dream of Pualugu Dam coming true. nothing was said about it. About $12 million have been sunk into that project, and up to date, there is nothing to show for. I urge the government to go after those who have taken that money, and then we use it to develop that project, because it's one of the best that should happen in the area of what agriculture, and then the Akosomo Dam. If you look at that project, it is meant to ensure irrigation of the north to boost agriculture. Then, apart from that, it's also to support the Akosomo Dam, that anytime Bagri water is spilled and we have that dam in place, it's going to take some volume of water and reduce the pressure and the effect on Akosomo Dam. So it's a two-way traffic, which is so important that it saves the Akosomo Dam, it creates what irrigation for us, and of course, by extension, we are able to get agriculture, which is the focus of this government. So I would urge the government, go after those people who have taken that money, and then also put in a lot of resources to get the dam built, and then let's use it to develop agriculture in the north and then support Akosomo Dam.
Well, thank you for your thoughts. Let's get into the papers now. Presently, we'll be joined by Dr. Mohammed, and then we'll get his take as well. Oh, Dr. Jabir Mohammed is here with me. Doc, I said San Nazua earlier. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. What about you?
I am well, by God's grace. I know there's a lot you would have to unpack when it comes to the budget, but I would ask that you reserve that for when we start with the newspapers. But is there anything, a burning issue you'd like to share with us this morning before we delve into the papers?
Well, every day I keep preaching about street lighting in Ghana, and I maintain that it is very important that we keep our street lights properly on, because that is usually an accident, what do you call it, accident trap zones. So I believe that we have to work very hard to keep our street lights on. We need to ensure that the streets are very, 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 very light, so that when you are driving in the night, you can properly drive without any challenge. So I employ the authorities, the National Road Safety Commission, the road minister, the regional ministers. Everybody should try as much as possible to keep our street light on all the time.
All right. Thank you for those thoughts, gentlemen. Let's make tracks. Let's get right into the papers. The Ghanaian Times newspaper this morning, Budget 2025, government to spend 291 billion Ghana cedis to build a more resilient and equitable society. That's according to Dr. Kasila Forson, the finance minister. Budget not inspirational. That's according to the minority, but majority says it will stabilize the economy. Highlights overall real GDP growth of at least 4.0%. Non-oil real GDP growth of at least 4.8%, end period inflation rate of 11.9%, primary balance on commitment basis at a surplus of 1.5% of GDP, and gross international reserves, including oil funds and encumbered or pledged assets, to cover not less than 3 months of imports. And those are the projections. Now, 5 taxes scrapped to cushion businesses and the citizenry. That story on page 13 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. On the back page, teenage pregnancy, female genital mutilation remain serious issues in Upper East region. That's Fawe, the female genital mutilation issue. And then accelerate growth of women entrepreneurs, GEA CEO says so. That's the CEO of the Ghana Enterprises Agency, calling for an acceleration of growth of women entrepreneurs. And hopefully, if things go well with the Women's Development Bank, as yesterday was mentioned that there would be funding for the commencement of those activities. Who knows how that would impact this sector and women entrepreneurs. But teenage pregnancy, that's where I'm starting on the back page. Teenage pregnancy and some obnoxious cultural practices like female genital mutilation are still major issues affecting the growth and development of adolescent girls in some rural and poverty-stricken communities in the Upper East region. The Forum for African Women Educationalists, Ghana, an international non-governmental organization, has observed. Mr. Richard Amweni, National Coordinator for FAWE Ghana chapter, said the increasing rate of teenage pregnancy in some districts and municipalities in the region was, quote, highly lamentable and mind-boggling. So just to look at some of the statistics, right? Even before we get there, it mentions that the 5-year project launched in 2022 and scheduled to end next year seeks to support the realization of sexual and reproductive rights for adolescent girls and boys in Ghana, Mozambique, and Uganda. And the figures are stark. If you look at the Kassina Nankana municipality, there was a significant reduction between 2021 and 2022, 68.47% and 65.3%, and then 59.49% and 57.95% recorded in 2023 and 2024. That is what the data says. And there's a lot more from the Builsa North area and Kassina Nankana West, but it still remains a troubling issue, teenage pregnancy, and then what we call FGM, female genital mutilation. We used to call it female circumcision, and then it was given a stronger term because it's completely unacceptable. I want us to take a quick look at that before we get into the economy-related issues, gentlemen. And if you like, you can tie that to the bit about sanitary pads and the commitment made by the finance minister in respect of that. I'll start with you, Dr. Asan Asante.
I think it's a laudable program. I will start with the sanitary pad issue.
Free sanitary
because
pads.
This is an issue that we have learned that it affects girls who have reached adolescent age, and it creates all manner of problems for them, to the extent that some of them are not able to attend classes and the rest of them. So we need to support them to prevent all manner of health problems that when they are not able to dress properly, it can affect them. I support that call, and I believe that government must make sure that the support that they give, they will continue to maintain that, and that will also boost, girls' education, and then put them in classroom as opposed to having them on the streets of the country. The second issue about FGM and then pregnancy, teenage pregnancy. I thought that we had dealt with FGM because there was strong advocacy against that. And then I don't know whether even there's a law that prescribes that. So it's surprising to me to hear this morning that we continue to have such practice in this country. I think all that we need is law enforcement in this area, and ensure that whoever breaches any rule regarding this is properly brought to book. The issue about teenage pregnancy is another big one, because it has caused this country and continue to cause this country a lot in terms of so many things, health problems, and the fact that children are not able to continue their education. It leads to, broken homes and a host of other problems. So we have to begin from somewhere. First of all, with socialization, to inculcate into children the need to keep themselves up to the time that they become matured, and then they go into adult business. And then issue of schools taking up the socialization program and making sure that they become the eyes and the ears of family and society, that whoever want to be funny with those girls, those people are dealt with. And above all, we as a society, we must also step our game and ensure that when we see something, we say something. More often than not, you see that issues of this nature, when it occurs, they are swept under the carpet.
Right.
People don't want to report and all that. We should strengthen people to report such cases to the rightful authorities, and we urge DOPSU to be active, more active in this area, because over the years they have done so well. We want them to look at these things and deal with them head on.
Dr. Mohammed, I will always highlight these issues because women's issues are a great concern to me, and I believe in many ways they've suffered more than enough. And so that is why I would highlight the free sanitary pad situation and this story as well. Any quick thoughts on still the prevalence of teenage pregnancy and female genital mutilation, especially in the northern belt of the country? Any quick thoughts?
Well, the northern region has been a critical area in which most of these things happen, especially the Kasana-Nankana district, as you mentioned earlier. This is not the first time I've heard of this before. And I believe that, government will have to come up with programs to support girls. And one of the critical one of the critical things that government is doing in recent times has to do with the National Apprenticeship Program. And even the Israel administration had in place some other some other technical training programs for women, like the sewing and all of that. So I believe that if we are able to put this into practice, more girls will be put, if they're active and they get something doing, I don't think that they will get engaged with men that would eventually lead to the pregnancy.
Right.
And also, I do believe that education is very important. So we have to intensify the education, especially the teachers who teaches them must intensify, their parents must intensify education, religious bodies must intensify education, NGOs must intensify education. If all of them are able to do that, I do hope that we'll be able to keep the situation. And for the issue of the sanitary pass, it's been a very troubling moment for most women, especially in recent times. Sanitary passes are very expensive.
Right.
So if the government is saying that they want to come out to support women in terms of sanitary pads, I think that it's a step in the right direction. It's a very, very, very good social program that can help to ameliorate the challenges that women face, especially when it comes to protecting their menses and other things. Especially, it's also going to help to support health. It's going to reduce the infections. It's going to reduce the enrollment in the health centers and all of that. So I think that these are very good things. And the female genital mutilation, this is something that practice that has existed for a very long time. It's a cultural issue that I think that we have to begin to know that it poses a lot of health problems. So we need to also educate the people, in as much as it's a culture, do as much as possible to eliminate it so that we can stop the challenges that we face when it comes to those kind of social problems.
All right. Gentlemen, let's quickly get into the budget statement. And of course, you would see in front of the Ghanaian Times newspaper, the banner headline, government to spend $291 billion to build more resilient, equitable society. And Dr. Kasila Forson hoisting, that has become a tradition now, right? Hoisting his, what do you call it, a briefcase? And he said it was from Horseman and that we should buy made in Ghana. So what does the story say? I'll read two because the minority says the budget is not inspirational. The Minority Caucus in Parliament says the budget statement and economic policy of government for the year ending December 31, 2025 is empty and does not inspire confidence in the administration to address the economic challenges of the country. And that was Alexander Afenyo-Markin, the minority leader. He called it another chapter of lamentations on the back of the SONA, and that it was an azan budget or a fraudulent budget. But this is what the finance minister says. The government has projected to spend 291 billion Ghana cedis in the 2025 fiscal year to implement the budget and fund infrastructural projects. The finance minister, Dr. Kasila Forson, who asked Parliament for approval for the government to spend the amount when he presented the 2025 budget statement and economic policy to the House, said the money would be used to finance the budget and government initiatives. He said the government was estimated to raise a total revenue and grants of 223.8 billion Ghana cedis, representing 17.2% of gross domestic product, up from 186.5 billion Ghana cedis, or 17.4% of GDP. And you would also look at these projections and ask yourself whether they are realistic, because that is what we would always do to find out whether they are realistic, so that we can meet them and then also, if possible, exceed them. He said the residual net domestic financing will amount to 36.9 billion cedis. And of course, there is the issue of 5 taxes getting scrapped as well. So they are the 10% withholding tax on winnings from lottery, known as betting tax. And I've heard Dr. Gideon Boako and others try to expatiate on this matter. The 1% electronic transfer levy, the emission levy on industries and vehicles, value-added tax on motor vehicle insurance policy. And of course, there's also the withholding tax on winning of unprocessed gold by small-scale miners. Dr. Mohammed, for you, listening to this, what were your thoughts? Did it give you hope?
Yes, I think the budget inspired some level of confidence in the system. This is not an ambitious budget. This is not overestimated. This is a budget that is within the means of the good people of Ghana. And I think that it is a path to rebalancing the economy and making the economy much more resilient and sound. So Atufosin did a good job. And I think that if it is properly implemented, the transformation we want to see, we'll begin to see that in no too distant future. I think that I know he talked about taxes and all of that, and some taxes were scrapped. You know, he did a very intelligent scrapping of the taxes. He cut one part and scrapped the other part just to make businesses more comfortable. If you have a certain amount of money lying somewhere in fallow, and you believe that you can go to that land and fetch something and cancel other ones that are seem to be obnoxious to businesses and also to individuals, it is better to do that. One important thing I'm very much happy about is the electronic transaction levy, because that one stops financial inclusion, and it affects businesses, it affects individuals who want to be included in the financial system. So if that tax that has been scrapped is a very, 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 very important tax, and I think that is going a long way to help to foster financial inclusion and make Ghanaians feel better.
Let me just ask you very quickly, though. I mean, there's a plethora of issues to look at. I listened to Professor Bokpin yesterday. He said over the last number of years, the only budget that didn't sneak stuff on Ghanaians but met the general expectations was this budget. He said the budget responded to the past and built for the future, and he congratulated the president and the finance minister on that. Then there's the thorny issue. I'd like you to share your thoughts on this, the betting tax. So Dr. Amin Adam, Dr. Gideon Boako have come out to say it was never deducted, it was never implemented. What I found curious about that was, I remember sometime last year, I was at my barbershop, right? And there's a gentleman who comes in sometimes, he comes for a haircut, and he was actually lamenting that he had just got winnings, and once he tried retrieving and all of that, that indeed, I think it was about 3,000 something or 4,000 cedis, and 10% had been taken. So when I heard that from Dr. Amin Adam, unless this gentleman was fibbing, lying at the time, I found it a little interesting. But then his explanation also seemed to make some sense. Then I listened to Dr. Kasilato Forson, who also made mention of the fact that no, Dr. Amin Adam was not on top of issues, and that about 80 million Ghana cedis had actually been taken as betting tax. What's your quick reaction to these issues before I go to Dr. Hassan Asante?
Yeah, all of this is about an issue of data. The reconciliation of the data between what the previous administration says and what the current administration is saying. And they are holding the public purse now, and they know all the channels of the resources that came in recent times. So if he says that 80 million has been realized from betting tax, who are we to say that the data he's presenting is not accurate? if Aminanta has his own data, he should also present it and say that, well, as a finance minister before I left office, these were the figures. But you don't say that the nothing was realized out of it when it is reported that 80 million was realized out of it. So it is something about data that they have to reconcile. If they are able to do so, I think that we'll get out of this particular problem. Do you remember that even in the past administration, they keep doing a lot of comparative analysis that did not even order well. Sometimes even at 5th year of the administration, 6th year, 7th year, even 8th year, they were still comparing figures with 2016, which to me, this budget did not present that. It went straight and simple to the point. It was very clear, unambiguous. There was nothing like a lot of comparative analysis that do not really order well. They could have even compared the debt figures, they could have compared the inflation figures, they could have compared exchange rate figures, they could have compared so many things, but they chose a different path. And I think that the sanity of the presentation, let us maintain the sanity of the presentation and debate the substance of the issue and stop doing politics about things that is not political.
Let me come to you, Dr. Asan Asante. Another thing I found interesting, and of course on social media, we would have to follow these issues. I saw a picture of Dennis Miracles Abuaje, who had headed the campaign for Dr. Bawumia, with a placard that said, "No betting tax." And of course, then you ask the question, if the promise was being made by the previous administration that if Dr. Bawumia won the election, there would be no betting tax, what were they going to cancel? Anyway, your thoughts on some of these matters, Dr. Kwame Asan Asante.
Yeah,
please unmute.
I think
yes, I can hear you now.
I was also surprised to hear that because I have something with me here. I just pick it from online, Gaming Africa. It said, Dr. Bawumia, I will abolish betting tax, e-levy, VAT on electricity.
Exactly.
So if the thing did not exist, what were you going to abolish? It did exist, and except that they are being disingenuous relative to the issue we are discussing. Yes. So I don't see the point here. In governance, you proceed with integrity and in truth so that we follow you and believe in what you are saying. I believe that my position has always been, as a political scientist, that relative to state capacity, one of the things we look out here when we are dealing with state capacity is the ability for the state to raise revenue to run its own affairs. When you have a challenge here, then you go globetrotting with a cap in hand looking for financial resources. So issue about tax, I have always been on the side of it, supporting taxation. But my problem has always been the incidence of taxation, that we always want to see that the burden would not be too much for the ordinary person to bear. But if the government believes that this is the way forward to it, fine. But my question also relative to taxation is that we take a lot of taxes, but one challenge we have is the use of the taxation. We want to urge this government to put these taxes into effective use.
Right.
Because if you read the budget, they talk about the fact that the previous government abused some of these things. We want a paradigm shift in this regard so that taxation will be realized and used for the purpose for which we take them. Issue of the budget not inspirational, or inspiring. It's another important point worth considering. I found it, I'm not an economist, but there are things that resonate with me. And for that matter, I believe it also resonates with Ghanaians. If you look at the issue that you want to focus on agriculture, I would say hooray to it. But what I want is that the government should walk the talk and then spell out certain specifics. Where are we going to get land? Farm inputs and the rest of them. It shouldn't be just we are going into agriculture, because you and I know issue about land for agriculture is a problem. Issue of land tenure system and the problems it creates. Issue of even harvest, post-harvest losses. How are we going to deal with that?
Right.
And then markets all right? Are we going to have market for what we produce and all that? You encourage people to produce. At the end of the day, there's no market for them. So I expect them to do something in this regard.
Right.
And then the finance minister showcasing Made in Ghana back. And also, if you extend it to the budget, they are saying that they want to encourage the consumption of Made in Ghana goods. This we have heard time and again. And this time around, we want to see a change in that type of conversation. The narrative should change. And we should begin by patronizing what we produce, rice.
Right.
We should reduce the import of rice that we bring into this country. In recent time, I've learned that we spend about $8 million a year to import onion from Burkina Faso and the rest of them. All these things must cease.
Right.
And then we should be able to patronize what we produce. And that is the way to go.
All right. Gentlemen, we have to accelerate, and I'll need more bite-sized reactions from all of us, including me. But we must all sacrifice to build nation. That's the finance minister. And then 8 vehicles, tanker burnt at fuel station explosion in Techiman. And yesterday, around the Achimota area, there was this trailer, as we call them, which, overturned, creating a bit of traffic in the late hours of the evening. And then my stolen $95,000 jewelry was purchased over a period of 35 years, Cecilia Dapa says so. That's about $410,000 that she says was taken. I believe another 300,000 euros and some CDs, hundreds of thousands of CDs, and then jewelry and other things. And of course, she's in court over those issues. I'll just quickly get into some other stories or headlines, and then you can add your reactions to those. The Ghanaian publisher, Mohammed's Azan budget offers no hope, Afenyo Markin cries for the youth, and $279 million gold bought fund, another creates loot and share. Dr. Amin Adam, the former finance minister, says so. He says another. Does that mean there were others before that? Ken Ashigbe slams government's Galamsey fight. Let me quickly do that story. Now, Dr. Kenneth Ashigbe, convener of the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining, has raised serious concerns about the government's approach to tackling illegal mining, commonly known as Galamsey. Despite various interventions, he insists that the problem remains critical and requires more decisive action, particularly from President John Dramani Mahama. Speaking on Joy News on Monday, Dr. Ashigbe highlighted the alarming degradation of Ghana's forest reserves. He revealed that 9 reserves had been declared no-go areas due to illegal mining activities, and while 2 in the Ashanti region had been reclaimed, efforts to combat the menace are being undermined. He pointed out that security task forces deployed to fight Galamsey are often outnumbered and outgunned by illegal miners. He criticized the delay in government action, specifically questioning the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources in action. But we've also heard the bit about LI 2462 being repealed. I'll start with you, Dr. Asan Asante. I want to start with you on this matter briefly, and then I'll go to Dr. Mohammed.
I will start with Galamsey, and my position has not changed. We should sustain the effort and then fight on. It appears to be a daunting task, but I know it is within the reach of government, because if it's issue about security, I can dove my heart for the Ghanaian forces. When given the opportunity, they will get those people out, and then we'll ensure sanity in that area.
Doc, there have been times where even the military has been outgunned and outnumbered in these instances.
Yeah, but are we saying that if that is the case, the military cannot go in there again with another strategy to overcome them? I trust the Ghanaian forces. Let's take our hands off them and give them what they require to do the work, and we'll come back and clap for them. I know that. But the government must also put it out, a house in order to be able to shepherd us through a certain pragmatic process that would lead toward the results that we want. As of now, I have not seen what is really on the ground that will give us the results. But I will not also, be quick to attack the government in that direction. I believe that they are putting things together, but the earlier they did it, the better, because we can't wait. The Galamsey menace is taking lives, destroying the ecosystem, and it's a threat to our survival. Look at the budget. when you read, they say cocoa production has reduced by 50%, and part is placed, part of the blame is attributed to what? Galamsey activities and the rest of them. We know that. So it's something that we can't toy with. And against the threat that some of the heavy metals are finding expression in the cocoa pods and the beans, it must be a worrying something to us. The issue of the budget inspiring no hope. It's a talk that we know. Every time government present budget, the opposition will never praise any budget of this nature. But if you look at the things they want to concentrate on, I believe if they are able to do it, it's going to help us. One, by reducing government expenditure. We want that statement. Government, if you look at all the budgets, every government want to tell us that they are in to reduce expenditure. But what do we see at the end of the day? Bloated expenditure, waste, financial waste. The Auditor General report is there with a lot of figures that we see all the time. This time around, we want to make sure that we hold the government feet to the heat of accountability relative to what he's saying, and that we want to ensure that we have the best for our society.
Right.
The good board issue that you are talking about.
Please make that your final point, Doc.
Yes, I will make. It is a good project because if you look at the things that they want to do, for me, as an ordinary man, is going to stem the tide and create a certain enabling environments to be able to regulate the activities. I support the call that we should have that body that can, last I was listening to Sami Jemfi, and it's something that I've said before, that we should have a body that will say, look, you can only sell at this point. And when you do, the government can track where you got a license from, how you have managed the process to the extent that you've come to the final stage, and then you are now selling. All these processes will be able to strengthen, and at the end of the day, we'll have the best.
Dr. Mohammed.
Well, the illegal mining is a very serious matter. And I think that we have to find a way to deal with it and deal with it very well. What I would suggest now is that government must stop all licensing of people who want to go into mining, especially small-scale mining. They have to put a stop to the licensing. And secondly, the gold board is a very important area. So what you need to do is that just set out the board as early as possible. Put in all the regulations, even in as much as before you even go to Minerals Commission to take a license, you need to come up with a proper plan, all the business plan, your sustainability issues, your land recovery, and all of that. So the gold board will approve these particular processes. Then after that, you go for the licensing from the Minerals Commission. Then they can allow you to go in and mine. So we need to put in pragmatic measures to be able to stop that, because it is not just affecting only the environment, but it's been affecting us financially, especially the cocoa and beans and all of that. It's reducing significantly, and that is a major source of income to us. It is destroying our water bodies, creating health problems and all of that. So we really need to tackle it and tackle it very well. If we are able to do so, I think that we'll resolve all the challenges. And for the budget, we have already spoken about it. As for hope, there is hope in the budget because there is a paradigm shift in the way things are done. And I think that as for opposition, they will always have something to say. They will always say that the budget is not good. Even if the NDC was also in opposition, they would have said that there is no hope in the budget. But I think that the budget has gotten certain key elements, especially expenditure rationalization and so forth. And I think that this is a step in the right direction. And if we work very hard, we will transform the country we want to do. What I didn't see clearly in it was my 24-hour economy. But I think that they said they were going to present a separate paper on that. And also, there is going to be a sectorial presentation of the budget. It's going to be departed from the previous administration. So every sector will come in to make a presentation in Parliament of how they are going to utilize their resources. And I think that this is a very, very, very good thing that they are doing. So that they know that this is what is allocated to you. If you don't handle it very well, then you will be exposed for not doing your work.
Right. Let me just walk you through the rest of the stories and take your quick reactions, and it's a wrap. The Daily Guide 2025 budget, government allocates 44.17 billion for key initiatives, scraps taxes, reintroduces road tolls, and some of the stories we've done, I'm not going back to them. So that's that. The overseer, let me see which one. So government to add 100,000 barrel refinery to Tor, that's the Tema oil refinery, as it moves to restore operations. And then the Accra Times, so it says, I'll focus on the affirmative action issues. Implement affirmative action law. Speaker Bagbin appeals to President Mahama. Don't forget the men in pursuit of affirmative action. That's the majority leader, Mahama Ayariga, and it's a call I support. Women's issues, there are men. All of us need to be on board. And if you exclude the men, it's a recipe for disaster. MP calls for more women in leadership and governance. That's Honorable Joanna Jan Kujo there. She's been speaking to the issues. Then, the Custodian newspaper, Ghana's GDP hits 5.7% under NPP. That's according to Dr. Gideon Boako. Sometimes I like how we like to bandy about GDP figures and fail to look at how they commensurate with the ordinary person and what happens in the economy, the cost of living, and how people feel in their pockets. We like doing that. NDC, MPP, GDP. Anyway, then there's also government seeks over 290 billion Ghana cedis for 2025. And Mahama government inherited 67.5 billion unpaid arrears. All of that, and this story is in the Daily Analyst newspaper. Gentlemen, you have a minute each, and then we can wrap it all up. I'll start with you, Dr. Asan Asante.
Affirmative action, good project. Let's sustain that. It's good. It will help and bring everybody up to a level that we all expect. That also extends toward supporting the girl child education and the rest of them. But my question is that who takes care of the boy child today? Because it seems to me that all efforts are towards promoting the girl child, right? That's good. But what about the boy child? If we don't put the two together side by side, we'll finish one and we'll begin to work on one for starters. I think that we must balance the act very well, and it will help us.
All right. Just a quick thought. There was also talk about free textbooks for students and then the first year tertiary level students or university students and the promise that was made. Do you have any reactions to that?
Yes, free textbook, good. But the students want to receive the books whilst they are in that class. We have history where people move to classes ahead of them, and the books that they were supposed to have used them will come later. I mean, look at this past government. They spend a lot of time developing curriculum about beautiful curriculum, which some of us took part in looking at it and all that. The government couldn't even, earmark money to purchase them and all that. So some of the books, they were not able to buy them, and they use them for the purpose for which they budget for. And this is not the best.
Okay.
Let us change the game and make sure that we strengthen. And I will urge those who develop the curriculum that they should look at the changing circumstances of the world and then incorporate into our curriculum things that will make our students being able to rub shoulders with their counterparts all over the world.
All right. Dr. Mohammed, you have the final word. If you can make it less than a minute, I'd be grateful.
Okay, two issues. One, the TOR. I think that TOR is going back to work, and I believe that we are going to be able to refine a lot of oil, then we can resolve most of the problems that we face. The second thing is about the no-fee stress policy. I think that policy is a good policy, but I think that it should be targeted. It's not everybody who should benefit from that particular policy. Paying the fees of all tertiary students is not really a very progressive one. If you add that to the free senior high school, we are looking at close to more than 4 billion Ghana cedis just from there alone. So we need to realign that. After this year, we have to look at it and make some changes to it.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining the conversation. You heard there Dr. Jabir Mohammed. He's a senior lecturer at University of Ghana Business School. We also had Dr. Kwame Asante, head of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana and a political scientist as well. Let's head into sports now, and we'll be right back with all the sporting action.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to AM Sports here with me, Muftahu Nabila Abda. Later today, the president of the Ghana Football Association, Kurt Okoreku, will be voted onto the CAF Executive Committee. The Confederation of African Football will be holding its elections later today in Cairo, and Kurt Okoreku, who is representing Wafu Zone B as the rep for this year's CAF elections, is going unopposed. And that means that automatically, Kurt Okoreku will be part of the executive committee after the elections later today. The previous representative of Wafu Zone B in the CAF executive committee, Jibril Hamidou, who also happens to be the president of the Niger Football Federation, he is going to contest for a position of a FIFA Council member, and Kurt Okoreku will replace him as a CAF executive committee member for the Wafu Zone B zone. And the Wafu Zone B is a country, that are the West African countries, so the likes of Burkina Faso, Niger, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Benin and Co. They are all part of the Wafu Zone B zone, and that is where Kurt Okoreku will be representing. And also, in the other areas, like the FIFA Council, the likes of Augustin Senghor, who happens to be the president of Senegal, he will also be going for that position. There's also a place for Amadou Penek, but this area is a keenly contested area because about 5 people are going to be voted onto the FIFA Executive Council, and 12 people are vying for these seats. And CAF President, Dr. Patrice Motsepe, he's also going for his second term in office later today, unopposed. So that means that his second tenure as president of the Confederation of African Football also starts later today. Motsepe was voted CAF president on March 7, 2021, and his second tenure will continue later today after the CAF elections in Cairo. It is expected to start at 10 a.m. Ghana time. And tomorrow, the big one is happening. It's the Joy Sports National Dialogue. We call it Resetting Ghana Sports, funding, infrastructure, governance, and recreation. Don't forget that recreation has been added to the sports ministry. So we are going to have a conversation that will see every single sector within the area of sports fully covered. Because as we speak, many people do not actually have an idea what this new government should be doing to ensure that Ghana sports is repositioned in a way that it is able to compete against the best in the continent and the rest of the world. My colleague Fentiu Tahiru has been previewing the event.
Yeah, it's a necessary conversation, isn't it, Musbao? It's almost as if at the moment, people have no clue how we're going to reset, how we're going to develop our sport. It's almost like even when the people are trying, it's just not coming together. And so whatever they touch, it turns to absolute bunkers. It's not working. So it's time to get creative. It's time to be drastic. It's time to be innovative in the approach. It's obvious that doing things the same way over and over again is simply not working. So what we've done is assemble people with established credentials of successfully running sporting entities or sporting enterprises. Tom Vernon is one of those people. He's come here, he's looked at this environment, and he's found a way to produce multi-million-dollar footballers while we stay in this country and have no clue how to do it. So we've gone to beg him to come and share ideas with us. How did he do it? How can we do it? How can we grow a successful sporting enterprise? How do we move the country from a natural resource base to becoming a talent-based economy? Because all around the world, if you look at the UK, for example, they have no natural resources. They depend solely on talent. How do we run a hybrid system? How do we successfully transition our economy from being solely dependent on natural resources to becoming dependent on both natural resources and talent? So he would give us ideas of how to do that. Also teaching us the established modern trends in terms of sporting expenditure. How are sponsors spending their money now? Why aren't they coming to Ghana? What are the spending trends of all these big enterprises? Why aren't the Nikes coming to Ghana? Why aren't the Pumas coming to Ghana? Why aren't all these giant spending corporations in sports investing in Ghana? What's wrong? What aren't we doing right? We have Dr. Frank Appiah-Kusi. He's a lecturer of sports science at the University of Health and Allied Sciences. He's been doing a lot of work on governance. You would agree with me, one of our biggest problems in this country is governance in the sporting federation. That's why the GFA can boldly hit their chest and say they are the most organized sporting institution in Ghana. And they're not even wrong. Because you saw the elections on Saturday. Weightlifting went to do elections. They couldn't even hold the elections. And it's that bad. No accountability. All they care about is coming for money from the sports community to travel abroad. No one has a development program. No one has accounting platforms, accounting regimes for accounting for the funds that are given to them. Everybody just wants a visa to travel abroad. So we have a massive governance issue in our sports. He will be taking us through that. Infrastructure is a big problem, as you would know. And that's where a very established international sports consultant, Magnus Rex Dankwa, will be taking us through that. Anthony Baffo will be taking us through a session on stadium security and the best practices in stadium infrastructure as well. And then you've also got others like Mauko Afajinu, who is the executive vice president of the African Table Tennis Federation. He will be taking us through a session on recreation, because the sports ministry is now being repurposed to sports and recreation. We need to understand the recreational aspect of that ministry, what is its role and what would be its contribution to the economic development and social cohesion that we so much seek in this country. And then you look at our carefully selected special guests that will be coming. Because the obvious question is it just another talk show? They're coming to talk, then what happens? So we've invited the people that are critical to the implementation of a lot of these ideas. The sports minister will be our special guest. Okay, we'll have Felix Ofozukwache will be there, somebody at the heart of government. Joshua Alabi will be there as well, an experienced sports administrator, now also in government. He will be there. We have seasoned sports journalists like Godfred Akoto-Boafo. He will be there. We invited Sadiq Adams as well. He's coming. And then you have administrators, not just from football. So the GFA are invited, but we have also invited people from Ghana Athletics, Power Fuseni, Ghana Swimming, Farida, and Delphina Kwe all have been invited, the likes of Veronica Comey. So we have a mix of carefully selected top brains in sports administration, sports governance, sports journalism to try and help us, because we are desperate at this moment. We need ideas, unique ideas on how we can move our sports forward. That's why Joy Sports couldn't just sit aloof and do another talking.
And the Rainbow Tennis Championship that will be happening, its 4th edition is here. 23 countries will be joining Ghana for this event, which is scheduled to start on Tuesday. In fact, it started yesterday and it's going to end on Thursday. My colleague, Razak Musbao, was at the first session, which she'd off yesterday, and he has details in this report.
Ghana South Africa Business Chamber, under the patronage of Clotet Cole MP Zeneto Ajiman Rawlings. The tournament aims to strengthen international business ties while promoting sports diplomacy. Running from Tuesday, March 11 to Thursday, March 13th, the competition will see 56 players from 23 countries battle it out at the Accra Lawn Tennis Club. Vice President of the Ghana South Africa Business Chamber, Chris Everett, expressed excitement about the tournament's growth and the increase in number of participants.
We started in 2022 and now excited with a 4th one, successfully grouped with a a total number of 56 players, 23 different nationalities, 13 ladies. It's the biggest group of members, the biggest group of ladies ever. And we start now officially with the representative of the South African High Commission. And now we're ready to go over a period of 3 days from today, the 11th of March, Wednesday the 12th, and then the finals on Thursday the 13th, where there's quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals will be played. And we are all very excited. 4th time in a row. It's a great honor to have this great team. We normally say it's a team. Now it's a family of tennis players of all nations. Expect fantastic competition. Who's going to know? Surely there will be a great competition to be the winners. They prepared for months ago already. We play in doubles. Let's see on the play out today and tomorrow what's going to happen, and on the finals on Thursday. Obviously, everybody is welcome on Thursday to come and have a look as well.
With proceeds set to benefit the Zaneto Ajiman Rawlings Foundation for Community Project in Korle Klottey, the MP praised the initiative and emphasized the need for greater investment in the sport to develop talents.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I wish more people would do that because, like I said, it creates a very non-threatening atmosphere where people feel safe enough to be a part of something where there's fun, there's competition, and at the end of that, a contribution is made towards a good project in a community. I think that we need to invest a lot more in our sports, and certainly, I mean, about 4 years ago or so, I donated quite a few tennis rackets to young children in the constituency, just to encourage the sports. And so from my point of view, we will keep advocating, not just for young people to get involved in sport, but for the government to pay more attention to talent and pushing us as far as we can go, and not just looking at football and putting all the money in football.
Meanwhile, defending champions Team USA are gearing up to retain their title against fierce competition from Ghana, India, Italy, Belgium and South Africa.
Welcome back on the AM show. Right before we dig into our big stories, let me tell you about Waylead Properties. Are you, yes you, are you thinking of a rewarding investment you can engage in? Well, Waylead Company Limited is your preferred choice for such an investment, and I'll tell you why. Waylead Company Limited is a real estate company with several developments to its credit in Accra. You can get to invest in their new development called Willow Lane, where elegance meets tranquility in the heart of Accra. And they're providing quality housing at an affordable cost and also with a flexible payment option. At Waylead Properties, we provide you 24-hour security, reliable power supply, and other social amenities to make your stay a memorable one. Now, if you're excited, all you have to do now is pick up your phone and dial either one of these numbers: 0240 111 119, 0240 111 119, or 0504 499 999. You can also check them out on www.waylead.org. And the AM show, of course, is sponsored by Waylead Properties. They are making it possible for us to bring this program to you. Now, as per Finance Minister Dr. Kassila Atoforsen, it's a troubling economy, but it will be fixed. That's according to him. And that was the state of Ghana's economy as he painted it, as he presented his maiden budget for 2025. But not without backlash from the opposition NPP. They described it as one of lamentations. In fact, the minority leader called it an Azan budget. We're going to unpack the issues highlighted in the 2025 budget, where the government said to abolish some 5 taxes, including the infamous e-levy, betting tax, and others under a certificate of urgency. Joining us in the studio, we all call him the Honorable Seth Tekpe, former finance minister and presidential advisor on the economy. Good morning.
Good morning to you, and good morning to your viewers and listeners.
Good to have you join us in the studio.
Yeah, been a while.
I want us to, it has been a while. Yeah. I want us to start from the very start. What did you make of yesterday's budget presentation. And I asked that question from the standpoint of what I've heard from some economists, some people in the business sector, even spare parts dealers in Aboswokai. What did you, as Sektepe, former finance minister, now presidential advisor on the economy, what did you make of the budget yesterday?
Well, you're talking to somebody who was involved, in
the crafting of the budget.
Yeah, I mean, but of course, that's not to take anything away from the minister, who I think made a very good delivery. And the point, what I make of the budget is that, one, we spoke the truth, backed with facts, numbers, to show whether you're talking about arrears, whether you're talking about particularly the energy sector, heavy burden that we have, whether it is roads. It's not just about saying that we have problems, we have troubles, but within a period that the budget was prepared, we gathered facts. And you will see from the narrative and from yesterday's even presentation here by the minister on PM Express, the painful process that one had to go through to face what happens, or to get a facts about what happened to the tax refund account, which was set up, to facilitate refunds, because there will always be refunds. And what happened to those funds, the misapplication of the funds. So I would say, then secondly, you also saw a reflection of the determination of His Excellency the President. Remember, he quoted the President in ending by saying that we'll fix the economy. Of course, he has fiscal responsibility, as other ministers have their responsibilities, like Gadamse and the rest. So he's echoing, His Excellency's determination across board, all his ministers, to be aware and to deliver. There was also the promise, if you remember, after the SONA, from the promise given, to which the chairman reflected again on one of your programs, that's Dr. Yamsen, that his expectation is that the recommendations and others will be, factored into government programs. And I think you also saw some of the recommendations of that dialogue coming in, as well as education and the rest. So, in summary, we've presented Ghanaians with the facts, and that is what it is. The next step is to solve them. And we can go over some of the proposals that are made. I noticed that you quoted the tax aspect, which everybody is talking about.
Right. And of course, quite a lot to unpack. But before we get there, just out of curiosity, Kasilato Forsen was your deputy at a point in time at the Finance Ministry. Now he's minister and you are advising him. What has it been like? The rapport, the whole engagement, and of course you were in the thick of things, like you mentioned, in drafting this budget. What has it been like?
It's as surreal as taking over from Dr. Dufo. If you remember, I myself was a deputy.
To Dr. Dufo?
To Dr. Dufo. And that was somebody who had been governor, deputy governor, had since working in Europe, on our, tax, monetary and other issues, and who, after years, became the Minister for Finance. So you can imagine a wealth of, knowledge. He was very much a part of the ERP SAP, just as, the then and now late presidents and deputy ministers, Professor Meros and, Pakwisi, where when I was starting my career in the Ministry of Finance, these were the people who were bosses and gave us inspiration together with Sato Ahoy and the rest, So I think for me, it's gratifying for the Honorable Minister to acknowledge, the role I played Just as I also have to acknowledge, you know, the role of, you know, seniors, you know, many of who are still alive, you know, and take inspiration from, for example, the Honorable Pepra, with whom I interact, you know, quite frequently. So I think it's, for me, an issue of succession. And there are many of our types, you know. So as a management student, delegation is very important. When you have your deputy, you put them to the fire, just as I was, you know, and he's you know, come through. Remember, as in his introduction, paying compliments, you know, as majority leader, first ranking, you know, member of the House, a member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, when I was a deputy, which is, so you see the legislative aspect also, policy discussions in Parliament come into play. So I am, you know, confident that he has, you know, gathered enough, you know, experience and knowledge to be able to, you know, to handle the task, which
and of course, with support from some of you, I've seen pictures with the likes of Dr. Wisdom Dogbe, among others,
That's
all,
right,
you
yes.
know, backing you to...
There's a lot of goodwill, yes.
A lot of goodwill.
Yes.
But let me just mention this. So the minority described this budget as a budget full of lamentations and as our budget. To what extent is that true?
Is it lamentations or telling Ghanaians the facts? I think I would have been happier if they had said all the things that were said about arrears, all the things that were said about, you know, the fiscal deficits, all the things that were said. Of course, they were quick to point out growth, which was the most positive thing in the arsenal and other things. When they tried to demolish the facts.
GDP growth of 5.7%?
Yeah.
Is that what you're referencing?
That's what I'm referencing to, you know, which one would not want to take too much away, but obviously that itself has its issues because you can see it came on the back of, you know, the mining sector. We know the galamsey and the other issues, you know, which were accentuated during that period. Of course, you're also coming from a low point. But again, if you point to the positive, you must accept, you know, responsibility. And so I would rather that they came up and said whether the facts that were presented in the budget from the energy sector, where we had ESLA to resolve some of the issues, from the road sector, where we had, again, an element of ESLA we don't talk about is a enhanced road levy, which is in the ESLA Act. You know, in the state in which we are leaving contractors, massive roads work which hasn't been, you know, completed. I think those are the things Ghanaians wants to discuss. Quite apart from the fact that Ghanaians know that it is this government that defaulted in our history in payment of our debt, despite the initiative to put oil revenue aside, you know, to pay down an allocation to pay down the debt. And remember the endowment for the administration coming on, you know, to inherit 2 oil fields in which we invested. I think Ghanaians now know about the buffers from the stabilization fund to heritage fund to, you know, which were meant as counter-cyclical measures. First, a counter-cyclical measure, the stabilization fund, so that, you know, we would, to quote them, not live on, you know, move beyond aid and the rest. Those are the measures that were there. I think the facts are there. All the resources that flowed, you know, to COVID, whilst they continue to blame COVID, you know, about $6 billion US, you know, dollars, I don't say no cities, you know, flowed in, you know, for COVID. The fund had to remind us that there were pre-existing conditions, right? Which meant that, yes, you can blame COVID, but the economy was already, you know, in trouble. So I think we should speak to the facts. And I would hope that during the debates in Parliament on, you know, the performance, you know, which has been laid out quite clearly in the budget, we would all apply ourselves, you know, to the facts and not, you know, just state that it's a lamentation. Of course, in a sense, it is a lamentation of the state of the economy, right? Yes.
Would you describe the economy as sick, as it stands now?
The numbers speak for itself. You know, the high numbers, some of the facts.
So the economy is sick?
Yes.
All right.
Yes. If you want me to be that emphatic.
Okay, so there are some interesting dynamics because I want us to quickly talk about the tax component of everything. 5 of them taken off, and there have been questions about some of them being non-existent, like the emissions levy. And of course, yesterday I heard talk about the Emissions Act and what it says, but the minority says it was never, rolled out. Then there's the betting tax, and the claim was that though it had been there, it had never been tapped into, that it had not been used. I heard the former finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, talk about it. I heard Dr. Gideon Buako espouse the same ideas, the same thoughts. What is the truth? Because then I heard later Dr. Kasi Latoforsen say that 80 million had been accrued from that pot. What is true?
Yes, and I think I listened to a program in which some of your producers, went back and quoted,
right.
GRA showing that,
GRA figures.
Yes, GRA figures.
Showing that.
I think the 80 billion, it was actually, research by one of, I think your morning show, or whatever, I believe the morning show, showed clearly that GRA had included, betting tax. But the other point,
included in the sense of had it been
you collect.
had there been collections?
Exactly.
Had there been collections?
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. But suppose there were no collections. What is the point in going to Parliament? Right? To pass a law. If it's unfavorable, if you think you don't need it, what do? You go back to Parliament, right? To annul the law. So I don't see the point about it. It remains on our books. And GRA issued guidelines. GRA, maybe in the interval I can show it to you. GRA issued guidelines, right, for collecting the betting tax, right? So, but I think the more important thing I want to stress is it's not just about tax cuts. It's about the rationalization. I'm sure that you've heard us talk about that complement of what we want to do. What are we rationalizing and what is the goal? Ghana has four major taxes. They bring in 80% plus of the revenue, of tax revenue, right? Not total revenue. But significantly, since our grants have been dwindling, they also bring in most of the revenue. The first is income tax. All of us pay.
Indeed.
On your salary. It's an obligation. Once you earn income, whether wages, salary, profits by self-employed persons along the road, or big corporations, we all pay income tax. Corporate income tax, personal income tax, PAYE, okay? Now, if in our collective wisdom, we think that there's a group of Ghanaians, who are toiling, working, but can barely make it around the minimum wage, then we say let's exempt, a certain level of income to provide relief, right? If we also think that even above those, who are struggling and whose income may be exempted, you need to still lower the tax burden. You have a progressive tax regime, 5%, 10%, until those who earn above a certain income, who can support the economy better, maybe because the nation has invested in education, maybe because the nation has provided inputs and others and are earning, they then pay, taxes from 15% all the way up to the top. So income tax, it is the broadest. On the income side, on the expenditure side, again, we say there should be a tax which every Ghanaian should pay. In principle, every Ghanaian should pay. And that is the VAT, right? So these two taxes are neutral. Neutral in the sense that if you're a foreigner and you come and earn income, you have to pay, right? Unless, again, of course, in our collective wisdom, we go to Parliament and we say, wait a minute, we don't want to tax, textbooks. Let's say, any level, because it is an essential part of developing, the potential of the nation. We don't want to tax certain elements of, let's say, health, basic drugs, malaria is, now we're bringing in and supporting, the sanitary pads and all those. That's in our collective wisdom. Otherwise, we all have to pay, right? Now, the other two are more selective. Excise. I mentioned 4. Excise duty, right? And that's why they are called sin taxes. With due apologies. It doesn't really mean that everybody is. Because little alcohol, as even the good books, says, but they are teetotalers. But the majority of Ghanaians take a sip, whatever. But it comes with some, deficiencies. Yes, defects, right? And therefore, there's a tax, on alcohol, tobacco, petroleum, environment, pollution. So if you bring the car that is a guzzler, V8 or whatever, and you are, speeding and burning, you pay more by virtue of capacity, by virtue of the age of the vehicle, because it smokes and it does, or lack of maintenance, right? Then the last one, so you see in this case it is selective. The last selective one is import duty. But we are a nation that depends a lot on imports. So again, in our collective wisdom, we say raw materials that are going to be used by Ghanaian businesses and the rest should attract a lower rate, right? Otherwise, you pay a standard rate. But we also say, just like the other taxes, if textbooks are imported, it shouldn't be just domestic. They can be exempted, right? These are the 4. Now, any other tax, right, without a specific purpose, right, is just distorting these 4 taxes. Okay. And they bring in, the 80-20 rule. It means that they bring in, there may be many, like the 23-25 that we have now. Right. They don't bring in, more than 5 to 10%.
Now that we're talking taxes, there's also been the talk about the distortionary calculation of VAT.
I was just going to come to that.
Let's get into it briefly.
Yes, just briefly, yes. So why do you have to? We did a first exercise when we introduced VAT. VAT is a replacement tax. VAT replaces the sales tax. VAT replaces the service tax. And VAT replaces a number of levies. So that was VAT. So what we are doing is a deficiency in the tax regime by reintroducing some of these, levies. Why is it a deficiency? The calculation of VAT is tax inclusive, right? Because you may buy goods, no levies are shown on your invoice, even if you collect one, because they just say the price, this is what you paid, right? Other registered taxpayers is listed. So between the two of you, to unify the calculation of the tax, levies must be added as to the cost before you calculate the VAT. So of course, if, let's say, the cost without VAT and levies is 100, and you add 20 Ghana cedis, right, to the 100, instead of originally calculating the tax on 100, now you are going to calculate VAT on 120.
Exactly.
And that encourages evasion and avoidance.
Right.
It makes tax administration and compliance very difficult.
Tax avoidance in itself is not a bad thing, but it's evasion that then becomes criminal. But
avoidance avoidance is taking advantage. In a legal kind
if there are loopholes,
there are loopholes.
Even in the United States, if there are loopholes,
the courts have decided that you go back. Yeah. But just to finish the quick point, so evasion and avoidance becomes pervasive, and the graphs are there to show that in spite of all these levies, right, our revenue performance is stagnant. It means there's something wrong.
In other words, if you make the situation amenable to the people and they don't feel overtaxed, then they'll be willing to stop even tax avoidance. Which in itself is not necessarily criminal.
Precisely, because you remember they are competing. But let me add a second element. We did the customs, ICOMS, which used to be West Blue, and before that, GCNet, and So the customs has a system, right? The customs administration has a system called ICOMS. We merge IRS and the VAT service, into the domestic tax division under the GRA reforms when we created GRA.
Right.
The system that used to exist, the strongest one was the VIPS, the VAT system. Now you have made the two divisions. This is why we talk about ITAS. This is why even the IMF is telling us to implement ITAS. We don't have to wait for.
All right.
So that's another big deficiency, that there is no domestic tax system.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question.
Yes.
Because of time, I want us to make this very bite-sized. How is the 2025 budget, and moving forward, how are you going to address these issues, especially when it comes to VAT, for example? How are these issues going to be dealt with over time?
We have to go back to what we did in the 1990s and rationalize, simplify the tax.
We're going back to the 90s?
Yes, that was when the VAT was introduced. Okay. So what that we are doing is just going back.
I know it was in the 90s, but I was wondering why we were going back to, what thinking are we going back to?
We need to clean. As I was saying, you don't need most of the levies. One, you need levies. For example, we used to have two levies. The fiscal stabilization levy and then the temporary import duty. Anytime we went into an IMF program to make corrections, we brought them in, they lapsed. So we had COVID. You see why there's controversy with the COVID. We had COVID. We brought it in to help resolve COVID.
Right.
After COVID, let's leave it. So that during the next crisis, we can bring it in, to help the situation. So in other words, we want the tax system to be simple, to not just to administer, but for taxpayers to comply with. Simplicity is the game.
A quick point on taxes. Two main points I want us to get into, and then we shall move the conversation forward. Yesterday, we had a conversation with Stanley Aholu, who is president of the Ghana Chamber of Shipping. And the maritime sector, at least from what we have been told, contributes about 50% to our tax kitty. But there are so many slippages, problems, and of course, it is largely foreign-based because these ships are not owned by Ghanaians. These systems are not owned by Ghanaians. I practically heard nothing when it came to that sector. Is that something this government is looking at in terms of dealing with
the
tax situation?
The minister spoke about non-tax revenues.
Okay.
Those are fees and charges.
Okay.
And much of what, is being spoken about, by industry is the proliferation, of fees and charges in addition to the levies. And again, like the example, they add to cost. And they result in inflation if you want to get to the macroeconomic level. Because businesses are either, if you want to comply, then you add it to cost. And if you are in an industry where probably you have a bit of monopoly on what you produce, businesses would like to, would add it, and you pay, right? Because you have no other choice. On the other hand, if you are in a very competitive area, that's where the evasion and avoidance I spoke about, comes in. So simplification of the tax regime, user charges. You remember we also spoke about property taxes. They need to streamline, the property taxes at the subnational.
I remember hearing that.
Exactly. At the subnational government level, that's a tax which is a subnational, which we call in Ghana MMDA.
So technically what I'm asking then is, what is the plan? Because
the plan is...
The point is made that if we get even that sector alone right, if it's contributing that much to our national purse, if we get it right, how much more could we accrue? So what is the plan?
There are the targets. Currently we are hovering around 13 to 15%. The sub-Saharan African average for tax to GDP ratio is 17 point, not total tax.
Right.
Just the tax, including VAT. And in Canada, which are there, is 17.5, 18%. And as a middle income country, we are no longer a developing country. That is where we should be. So we are looking to move, the collection of taxes, cleaning the inefficiencies and others by an average of 3 percentage points of GDP, but you don't do that in a year. Right? Now, you don't also rush, right? Remember, we're not talking about annual, right? We're talking about promises that were made, promises made to do cleaning over the 4-year period, within which time you would see first a turnaround and then a complete change. So that's why the minister is saying, yes, we are proposing some low-hanging fruits which we want to implement immediately, but we would come back to Parliament. Not just with the VAT, but all these fees and others.
So eventually,
by the media review of going to the 2020.
Within what period are you hoping to?
We're looking to, first you have to amend the laws and do, so the VAT I think that he mentioned that there's technical assistance, coming on the way. So I see the window for that as extending to the mid-year review, which is now legal. Yeah, which yes. And then others which will require, for example, ITAS. To fix ITAS, have a domestic tax system for all domestic taxes, and it can be extended to the user fees and charges.
Right.
That could take us probably, by the time you finish all the modules and cover all the taxes, all domestic taxes, with an interface to customs, right? That could take probably up to the end of the year or somewhere.
So let's say by 2026, we should. By 2026, we should look at something.
Yes, we have the experience to be able to implement most of the measures by 2026.
How about
in the
import
2026
duties?
budget?
Import duties. Was there talk about that? Not that I heard.
Yeah, it's among the four. If you remember, I mentioned the four core. And the purpose of import duty is to protect domestic. So that's also discriminatory. Okay. If you don't buy a pen that is imported, like this, that's what I'm holding, no import duty. That's if you buy a big, which is now produced in Ghana. There are companies that are producing. Of course, we waive a bit, it's part of the rates on the raw materials that they use to produce.
Right.
So it's protective in a sense that it protects local industries. And it's discriminatory for consumers because if you don't use a foreign pen, you don't buy a foreign pen, Mont Blanc, which is the topmost.
Exactly.
You don't
if you're buying a Mont Blanc, then of course.
You don't pay import duty. Sorry, you pay import duty. Yes, you pay.
Because it comes from what?
Precisely.
France, Germany.
Yeah, it's a very, if for some reason we flourish as an economy and somebody comes to set up a Mont Blanc factory here for Africa.
Then that is waived?
It means that it's domestic, so you don't pay import duty on it. Yeah, and so that's why it's protective to enable us, generate,
My final bit on the taxes. Of course, you've taken out the e-levy, the betting tax, and all of these. The solution that was proposed by the finance minister.
Those are the true nuisance taxes. To use
the two nuisance taxes.
The true nuisance taxes.
True nuisance taxes.
To use the word, yes.
Okay. Well,
you remember that word came from Islam.
The COVID-19 levy is, but
yeah, no. COVID-19. I said that it is a tax that was introduced for calamity, and the equivalent we used to, was a temporary import duty, right? And then the fiscal stabilization levy or national stabilization levy, which is on income tax and on imports. But immediately it's over. If you add it and you keep collecting, there will be definitely some calamity, like the flooding, that took place.
And your solution is to dig into the tax refund kitty and utilize what is unused to make up for what the betting tax, the e-levy, would have accrued. This is thinking you've espoused before.
Actually.
As a tepe.
Yes, I think the Honourable Minister mentioned, because it was part of, he mentioned the origin. We had refunds for VAT, because VAT, when you export, you get all the taxes you paid on your inputs back. So you need to have a very winsome, regime. And part of it is you don't want to export your taxes. You don't want to export your VAT. You don't want to, because you want to make your exports competitive. So the
Otherwise,
VAT
there'll
law,
be too many taxes on them. They'll be unattractive to
no,
customers.
you can't compete.
And no one will buy them.
Our businesses cannot compete.
Right.
Because that is what even the mighty European countries say, whatever, they make sure that they alleviate. So by the time we receive the goods we are calling imports, they've taken off or compensated for all taxes paid to make them competitive. We also need to be. So when the VAT law was enacted, there was as in terms of the origin of these things, there was a refund amount which the then VAT service was allowed to keep. In other words, when they collect the money, keep in a sense that they had an account with the oversight, right? To make the refunds, to make the tax system, to make the VAT actually efficient. Now, this was expanded to cover all taxes. That's the increase from 3% to 6%. So, for example, import duty, which we are talking about, you may import raw materials, right? You pay import duty on the raw materials, but you may produce let's say beef, which is exported to Togo, which is exported to, if not back to the European countries where it originated. We need to make exports competitive. So there's something called duty drawback. You get a tax back, just as the VAT. So the long and short of it is that we needed to arm GRA. But once the money went into the consolidated fund, it could find other uses, right? So GRA withheld that one in paying to the consolidated fund, and they were to use it for refunds. What the minister is saying is that only 43% of the money that had accumulated was used for tax purposes. And that doesn't mean that there are not outstanding refunds that have to be made. And the money was misapplied to other things. So there is some money in there now. What he has done is to take a portion to resolve our issues.
But is this sustainable? Is this something you're going to be doing
I think
over
4%,
the years, or is it a makeshift stopgap measure for now?
It's a makeshift, and when you improve, remember that when you improve the tax system and your revenue begins to increase, as I said, right, even at 4%, the amount going into the funds will increase. And if, as and when we get to 6%, the equivalent of 6%, we could go back to the 6%. If that is what it means to make our exports efficient.
Because the GRA will still have to give these tax refunds over the years.
And let me give another example. You see, we say that in the US, people file their returns. And we are going to April, you see a lot of people filing their returns. Why do they file? It's probably because the PAYE from Mr. Kapus withheld by your accountant and paid to GRA. Does not take account of the fact that you have children in school. You are looking after old people. There are personal allowances, which you have to file a return. So what makes it popular in the US is that they have a refund account. And so most people file, right? And when they file and they recalculate their tax, they get a refund. And so that refund becomes something like a saving over the year, right? Which you can use substantially. So there's a motivation to file, right? So if we had our refund account, and we get our accountants and others to assist businesses, individuals, employees to file, that is the money we'll be using, as an incentive for people to file their returns because they would have paid.
So you're incentivizing it so that people will want to pay their taxes.
Exactly.
And of course, at the end, you get that buffer.
And it's a responsibility it's a responsibility of the state that if you have as you impose a penalty, if the state has used, more than what should be your tax obligation, they should refund it to you. Yeah.
Is that money invested in any way, or is it just kept?
But that's the point. It should have been even invested, right? Even in government bonds. It's government to government, yes. But it was completely, you heard the minister, it was completely, misapplied. Right? Even if it's for good.
I hear it went into paying of contractors and all of that. Road contractors.
Yes.
Is that correct?
But that's not the purpose.
Is that correct, though? Is that the information?
Yeah, I think the minister provided the information about some of the uses of the. No, it's not, because we have to, remember at the same time, we had the extra to clear the arrears, road fund, and the rest. So what happened to those funds, right? Why misapply those funds?
So those funds were misapplied. Just a quick point. On the discriminatory nature of the taxes, because then a typical example would be you bring in used vehicles into the country from Japan, from Korea, from all of these places. You go on the market, you are seeing some mini vehicles costing 70,000 Ghana cedis, 80,000 Ghana cedis, and more. Now, you fashion vehicles here in Ghana, you assemble them, okay? Volkswagen is doing that, among others. Kantanka is doing its own thing. And yet they end up being more expensive than, some of these other vehicles in terms of the used vehicles and the new vehicles made in Ghana. The new vehicles made in Ghana, look at the pricing, way more expensive. How then do they compete?
Well, one, when you use a vehicle assembled in Ghana, most of it is assembled, our roads are conditioned. Remember, it's been, how many years? Let's say 4 or 5 years since we started producing. So we are going to be having our own used vehicles, right? But because the roads and the compliance, emission laws and things are very strict outside, you may bring a vehicle which is about 50,000 miles, and it may look brand new.
It may be in better condition.
Maybe in better condition, than. So I think that, you see the complement of having good roads and making sure, so when we have a complement of, second-hand used vehicles which are assembled here or manufactured here if we get to that point. Then we need to make infrastructure important. We need to make emission tests and whatever, DVLA, and have to make sure these things are so that when you go and buy a Ghanaian second-hand car, it will not be in a dilapidated state, right? But it will be in a good condition just as, but the protection is still there. But that's why, and these are areas where legitimately you may give more incentives for the vehicles to be, imported here, and you don't abuse the exemptions that go to Parliament. It needs to be scrutinized because we also want to produce. We also it creates employment. We don't have to, generate employment for outsiders, And so you top up the exemptions. It shouldn't be excessive, but you top it up in order that you encourage the production, of goods. The car is big and yes.
All right. And how does the current budget address that situation?
The rationalization of the tax regime.
Rationalization of the tax regime. Generally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Generally.
Let's look at our debt situation, right? Yeah. The Bank of Ghana, the central bank, is calling for a bailout of about 53 billion Ghana cedis. Then you look at ECG, Cocoa Board, you look at the IPPs. Together, it's about 100, and if I do the calculation, 6832, that's about 102 billion.
Yes.
And we are looking at 68 billion for ECG, 32 billion for Cocoa Board. The IPPs about 1.73 billion. And then you put that actually side by side with the fact that we've paid 9.2 billion Ghana cedis in February in terms of our debt situation. In July, we will pay 6.2 billion.
That's the suspension of the debts which we had.
Okay.
Which was front-loaded.
Front-loaded.
So many of them were actually, backloaded, if you like, not to come into, to come after the elections, if you want to think so. And so we are, yes.
And then another 10.1 billion in August. How per the budget and how as a government?
Let's look at the
let me not even say as a party. Are you going to deal with these, even including the central bank's issue?
Well, yes, but okay, let's take the first one. The debt was suspended. Haircuts, after haircuts, there were suspensions and whatever. They are falling due, like the one that was just paid, by Ministry of Finance as a result of using TSA and other techniques to pay. What happens if we don't pay? We say that's an obligation.
It is of course, an obligation.
Yes. Despite, say, for example, if you take IPPs, despite how ESLA was handled, if you take the enhanced road levy, if you take, arrears owed to, contractors and the rest, right? I mean, despite all of these things, there are obligations. Because what is the alternative? You default a second time.
And if you default a second time, you are in the grips of an IMF program.
No, yeah, not just the IMF program, but for our own interest. We don't have access to the markets.
Your credibility also sinks
further. Your credibility, you sink further because the opportunity to go and borrow long term, 10 years and whatever, even from official creditors, when it's official creditors, that is the governments, that give us money, the multilaterals, like the IMF, World Bank, and the others that give us money, our own African Development Bank, right? It becomes difficult.
And funding from there has stalled. It has stopped, basically.
Exactly.
In respect of our budget.
Precisely. And actually, there's the Afrism problem. There's the EBIT, the ECOWAS Bank, who gave us, credit. And once they allow us a haircut, right, they will be deemed not to have performed well. Their ratings and things will be affected. This is why these institutions are being careful. So we have an obligation as Ghanaians and as administrators of the economy to resolve them. Let me take your mind back to single spine, which was inherited. Let me take your mind back to, when the oil pipeline was breached and we had to, and that is why it is painful, the misapplication of ESLA. We should have resolved the energy sector because the provision was there and we started paying down. We paid the VRA, a deposit and spread the balance, and ESLA was to be used to clear it. We had a term sheet, to clear the IPP debt because that's how ESLA was calculated to the penny, by the then Parliament, right? So we took a term sheet. We were to take a loan from Afrism and then later use the ESLA to service the loan. ESLA was collateralized, and one would think that after collateralization, you would resolve the issue more promptly. So I'm saying that yes. So we shouldn't forget that Dachi bond and all those things, they were also malfeasance in the sense that, you know, they were for a purpose, right? If you did Dachi bond and you used the money to finish the E-blocks and the rest, you know, that would have been a credit because it's a GET fund, right? So all these corrections will have to be made in the interest of the nation. Otherwise, we will be doomed, you know, like it happened to Zimbabwe and even advanced countries like Argentina and the rest, and we will not be able to borrow long term. The most painful is that we risk even not being able to borrow from institutions like the World Bank, where we can borrow and repay over 25 years. We need to bring measures like the sinking fund with the debt repayment account and all those things, you know, back.
Right.
And it's something that has to be done. So when His Excellency says that we'll fix it, he's not saying that it's easy. But he's saying that with the determination and help of all Ghanaians, you know, we should get ourselves out of this situation.
All right. I'll bring in some concerns of the minority NPP right before I get into the bit about the contracts awarded and stalled projects and what that is going to mean, that dynamic. The former Finance Minister, Dr. Amin Adam, makes mention of the fact that petroleum product prices have, if you look at the budget, it does not address their increments, which of course will take a toll on transport fares and all of that. There's also mention of the fact that as you are scrapping some of these taxes, you are also introducing others through the back door. Your reactions to these?
We are not introducing anything through the back door. We are rationalizing. So I don't know what specific tax he says.
Mention has been made of what you may want to do with the VAT and all of that.
No. We are correcting the VAT. I just explained elaborately what we want.
No, I'm just regurgitating what has been said.
Yes, and I'm saying that it's a misrepresentation of what we want to do. That's why I took my time.
How about the petroleum prices?
Petroleum prices. You go back to subsidy.
I am not saying we should go back to subsidy.
Well, I mean, that is
in the past, they
had told
that, in fact, in the 90s, we had to move away from some of these bits when it comes to even subsidizing electricity at a certain level, which we had to run away
from. When the minister says that we missed all the benchmarks under the IMF, it means they breached. One of them is breaching, you know, the promise to adjust petroleum prices, right? Remember we were doing it, then, you know, okay, before I come to that, it means that they breached it. If you knew it was impossible, why did you accept it? Why didn't you tell the fund that this was impossible? And you leave a legacy of adjustments, you know, for the oncoming government, and then you go back and you state that, you know what, it will be painful to Ghanaians. You know, did it. Of course, we did it, but remember, one of the strategic moves we made, which will be reintroduced, hopefully. A portion of ESLA was being used. We had started, right? We had started together with Ministry of Energy at the time, a boss, to hold strategic stocks, right? Now, what do the strategic stocks, you know, mean? Strategic stocks simply means that, and it's practiced in South Africa, in the US and everywhere, when the prices of, you know, crude oil or finished products drop, right? We bought, using it part of the ESLA funds, and stored them in the boss tanks. To the extent that we were going to even, you know, use GIF to produce more tank farms.
The Ghana Investment Fund.
Investment Fund, yes. And we actually started the experiment, and it was working. So when the price goes down, you store. You buy and store. When the price go up, then you release.
But has that ever been a reality? You know, our fuel prices never really reduced by a certain component that you really feel there's a major reduction. Apart from sometimes last year, where, in fact, government was forced in some instances with the pressure for some reductions, real reductions to be.
Let me give you the tangible outcome. The tangible outcome is that is what we used to stop petrol queues. You recall back then that anytime oil companies said they were going to, you know, increase prices because the prices had gone up, Goyle with Boss would say, then we released the stocks. And we made a margin on it. You didn't even have to increase it to the price. Because if you bought at 50, right, and the prices shoot up to about 57 before they get to 60, and you release the stock, right, you would have made adjustments around 60. But by releasing the stock, which you bought at 50, you could afford to release and price at 54.
Right.
Right? So you don't have to
still make a profit.
Still made a profit. We made. Right. I remember the very first one, we made about 2 million or so, Ghana cedi profit, which means that it worked. So we are going to go back to some of these initiatives, which, as we are saying, Honorable Jinapo, in his, maybe if you host him, he will give you, a lot more. I think energy is a very big headache, but he has a list of, solutions. So I urge you to invite him, and he would explain the Ghanaians.
Let's quickly get into contracts awarded worth 194 billion Ghana cedis, and of course we also have the stalled projects. But let me also
the largest of which is the road sector.
The road sector,
apart from energy. There is.
Then of course I mentioned the ECG and others, but that is on the bit about debts from some of these other entities. If you look at the key allocations to key initiatives, there's also the Akosombo Dam spillage victims. I'll get into this in a bit. But let's focus on the stalled projects component. We are looking at
let's take away before you go there.
You want us to clear
the Akosombo victims.
All right.
Yes.
So 2.5 million Ghana cedis.
How
are you sourcing these?
That is the essence of the stabilization fund.
I see.
Yes, that's the essence of the first time we took money out of it into the contingency fund under the Constitution was when we had the Kwame Nkrumah fire and flooding disaster back in 2015. Yes,
right.
The first funds that were released, just like COVID. Remember, the first funds that were released for COVID came from the stabilization fund, 250 million, US dollars. So if with one oil
that's where you say it was left with what, $64,000?
Yes, yeah. Right, that's stabilization.
And then some what? Is it
which also flowed,
million?
That's the sinking fund, which also, all of them come from the stabilization fund. The farm tank I was talking about, the tank farm I was talking about, so I'm giving you a practical example of these two practical examples of the use of that fund. We saw them when crude oil prices were high. Did we need the money? Yes, of course we did, right? But there was a need. We knew that and it was a lesson of the global financial crisis that made us implement it. The US had a similar example. So when COVID struck, the first money that was taken was $250 million US dollars from the stabilization fund. With 2 additional oil fields, we could have restored the cap. We didn't. We have withdrawn about 400, plus, probably around $5 million US dollars by now from the stabilization fund without, putting the money in and mainstreamed it, right?
So you're saying that these will not be a burden. Now, I just want to quickly go back. You've mentioned that this is where it will be coming from, the stabilization fund. The petroleum prices, you're saying that if you execute this properly, it would mean that the concern raised by the former finance minister, Dr. Amin Adam, will not come to play.
Yeah,
that prices will not be skyrocketing. The next best thing you can do,
I don't see
if you are not overseeing skyrocketing prices, the next best thing you can do is to stabilize. And so the prices will not be flip-flopping, going up
because
and down.
you do the adjustments and you complement it with what I was talking about. So you don't pontificate when you stop those measures.
And we're going to be holding you to this, your administration. We're going to be holding you to this.
But, it's already there. I think that, you recall that the minute, of course, we use the stabilization fund to pay the pension funds that were due, which were suspended. Yes. So that's a demonstration that we have started already.
Right. And so the 2.5 million for the Akosombo Dam spillage, how about the teacher and nurses trainee allowances, the free sanitary pad? There's also support for victims of course, the Akosombo Dam spillage, which I've mentioned, and then the recent Ketu South incident. Where are all of these coming from? Same source?
No, some of them will come from, some of them are
because regular, I think the teacher and nursing some of them allowances are from a different
kit. Some of them are regular allocations from the budget. Right. Here we are talking about
regular allocations that have not been so regular in the past.
Yes, but we have to regularize it. That's the point. You clear the arrears as we did with the IPP, the contractors, and we started doing, which were stored. Right. So you have to just come back to managing the budget in a more efficient manner. Yeah.
So coming to...
And by the way, a reminder that, we ended, with one oil field and with all these buffers and things that we created, we ended with a deficit of, 6.1% of GDP and on a new basis and a debt of 57%. So with 3 oil fields, we could have performed better.
So you're saying that with one oil field,
I'm pointing to precedent.
You could do this with 3 oil fields. This is the
and remember,
the production.
We are talking to ENI and others.
So what does it mean then? Because the bit about the GDP of 5.7% has also been made mention of and touted by this administration.
After 0.4, you are coming from a very low point.
At what 0.4?
2 years ago, of course, post-CP.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 0.4, right? And then that's the growth rate. And that means that the GDP did not grow as much as it should. I don't put all the blame on them. Of course, COVID was affected and the rest. But I'm pointing to the reality, that you're coming from, a low base. But that's not to take anything away. But I think we also have to, acknowledge that much of the growth as a government statistician, if you heard him say, was from the construction and mining. And there's a cost, to the boost in mining.
Are you saying that the 5.7% GDP was, in a way, artificial?
The government statistician, no, it's not artificial. I'm saying that there's a bigger cost to that growth because he mentioned construction as construction and mining as leading the charge. And I'm only reminding ourselves that we have a huge cost of reforestation, because... On the
back of Galamsey.
Exactly, because we have to do the mining in a more efficient manner. So that itself will drag, further inflation, so we seek to correct them.
Are you being cautionary then when you estimate that the GDP will grow by 4.0%, especially when we are coming from 5.7%? That's a 1.7% decline.
You should always be cautionary with budgeting, just as you would do in a household. You know your salary, right? You can predict certain things, school fees for the kids, amount to feed and whatever. What you cannot predict is when the child will fall sick. What you cannot predict is, sadly, when you have death in the family and other things. And they require, preparation. And sometimes you go and borrow, but then you must learn to pay.
So what do these then mean for the ordinary Ghanaian? Overall real GDP growth and not nominal real GDP growth of 4.0% projection, non-oil real GDP growth of 4.8%, end period inflation rate of 11.9%, primary balance on commitment basis as a surplus of 1.5% of GDP, gross international reserves, and you're looking at including oil, funds and encumbered or pledged assets to cover not less than 3 months of imports. I think currently it's about 4 months, is it?
Yeah.
4 months of imports. So you're saying that you are going to ensure that it covers nothing less than 3 months at any given time?
Because you need a buffer. Because anytime your cocoa prices drop or you have drought and you have other things. So again, I need to come back to buffers, because that is part of the caution. Caution that you don't control certain factors. Some of them are natural and you are not yet at a point. And let me give you a quick example. When the global financial crisis struck, you know that the US was the one subprime that took the hit, right? When the Fed bought the securities and they stopped the collapse of the banks and bought the securities, when they put them back on the markets, like the bonds which we have now, if we can put them back on it, they appreciated. And they earned so much money that $3 trillion of profit was shifted from the Fed, the central bank, the equivalent of the central bank, to the Treasury. That is the money which the Treasury held on to and used to prepare better for COVID by giving immediately money, for vaccines and all those things to be, and even cushioned, those, because they had to do lockdowns and things, So I'm saying that it is inevitable, right? What I'm saying is that it is inevitable to run an economy, just as it's inevitable to run a household without,
So you are underestimating on a practical level, but you could overshoot those expectations, and that would be a further boon to the economy if you got that. But some would still say, on the back of the growth that was recorded by the previous administration, even on the back of all the dire situations they had to deal with, this is going back.
No, they could have done better.
They could have done better.
Yes, because it's a...
But then you could be held to the same yardstick.
We should
that you can also do better.
Yes,
4%.
Yes, and we will do better.
You will do better.
Yes.
So why are you pegging it at 4% if you can do better?
Pardon?
Why are you pegging it at 4%?
And that's the realistic one, because you are looking at the realistic position of the economy. You are going to be paying arrears, some of which are for services that are gone past in the past, including the use of valuable IMF resources and austerity to do. You cannot, those who come, yes, there will be money in the hands of the contractors and the rest, but it made the economy, suffer previously. And mind you, it is for past, development. One is not saying that all the development was useless, but the way the arrears, the way even, we had something called a contract database, which we started, right? Which gave us, it started actually way back when I was a deputy. We didn't have a view of total, that's the Ministry of Finance, which is a coordinating point. They didn't have a view of outstanding contracts in the system by MMDAs. We started building it, right? And we were going to use it to calculate a better understanding of arrears and put it in a gift list. It was stopped. But then it was reintroduced, and by 2021, we were contracts in the system and arrears amounted to about 77 billion. That's including the contracts and the rest. Today we are talking about 125 plus, right? So we're saying that with the benefit of 3 oil fields, with the benefit of COVID flows, with the benefit, including what many Ghanaians paid when they had to travel and all that and take the shots and the rest, we could have done better, for sure.
If you look at the World Bank's
particularly
figures,
no default.
Right. If you look at the World Bank's figures in terms of the projected growth of Ghana's economy, the World Bank forecasts that the economy is expected to expand by 4.2% in 2025, 4.8% in 2026. Are you saying then that you are tailoring your budget according to some of these projections? 4% is just around 4.2%.
Yeah, because in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to do a lot of corrections, right? And so you have to be very realistic and measured, because some of them will take a toll, right? And so once you are done with the corrections have both benefits and costs. As I said, to make sure that you remove this element of arrears owed to private sector and make the private sector vibrant, right? You are going to pay for past, arrears and even work which was done, which led to the growth we are talking about today.
And I understand how that makes economic sense. But the point is, the ordinary Ghanaian on the street has no more patience left. Yes, you are enjoying some goodwill now. Yes, it will take quite a bit to get out of the doldrums. But no, the Ghanaian has no.
We are aware of that. And that is why...
Very little, next to no patience left
we are aware
to
of
deal
that.
with this.
And that is, we are aware of that. And let me give you a very practical example. You recall that in 2013, right, things were getting really, and the equivalent of the dialogue that was done there was cinching, right? We were working with African Development Bank on a homegrown policy. By the time we went into the IMF program, we actually tabled our homegrown policy for the negotiations, right? So I would hope that, and I expect, to be frank, that with the fourth review coming, these budgets and the proposals are going to be fed into the fourth review until we leave the IMF program, and then we'll continue. So we'll fashion it first into a homegrown, policy. And of course, the benefits of many of the things that we did, a debt repayment account, which would have avoided, with 3 oil fields, we could have avoided a default, which could have avoided a haircut and all those things. I think Ghanaians are now saying that...
Realistically, about how much time do you think it will take for the ordinary Ghanaian to start feeling the positive impact of the measures you hope to put in place as a government? Minding that political watchers will tell you that you practically have 2 years. And then after that, a lot of the goodwill would have been eroded. And then the politics will come in because John Mahama has 1 term. And then those who want to come in, the attention will shift.
The 2 years,
what's the realistic time?
The 2 years is realistically the period you need to do even medium-term reforms. So, and then there are what you call the low-hanging fruits, like fixes to the tax regime, make it more efficient, and those can be done in between 6 to 6 months to a year. I mean, quoting, yes. Some low-hanging fruits could come in as early as 3 months or so. So I think that we should be patient.
Low-hanging fruits like which one? Yeah. Very briefly, like which ones?
Low-hanging fruits like enforcing, tax collection and the rest, but which you cannot do in a very efficient manner without ITAS.
Okay.
The equivalent, the opposite of gift-based. That would enable you ramp up, your revenue performance in a year or so.
Quick question. Are you still planning to renegotiate a situation with the IMF?
I think we are enhancing the IMF program.
You are enhancing the IMF program?
From most of what
what does that mean?
It means that we are giving ourselves, let me give you an example. We have always insisted that in our Public Financial Management Act, we use the fiscal balance, right? Not the primary balance, right? As an internal, check on ourselves. And we tell ourselves that when you calculate when you calculate the primary balance, you are leaving out arrears, you are leaving out interest payments, and you are leaving out debt repayments. But you will agree with me that these are 3 critical areas for us, big challenges, arrears, right? So you might feel comfortable using primary balance, but remember, you went through the arrears. One is on the board, which, yes. So you have to give yourself a bigger target, which says that I need to clear the arrears. And so I am not going to assume that if I use a measure which excludes arrears, which excludes debt repayment and the rest, I'm doing better. No, you could do better. You could meet those IMF criteria and still not do better. And that is what the realization that we came to when we did a homegrown policy, which led to the establishment of, the Buffer Stabilization Fund. And of course, that came with the PRMA, Petroleum Revenue Management. But it was envisaged that we needed as a country, to do, because the history of IMF programs and things were there.
All right.
And we started implementing them. So we're going to be bringing, luckily, we don't need new laws. We need to tighten the laws rather. Yes.
I want us to talk about the 24-hour economy, but before we get there, again, just finally on the debt situation. We are looking at $3 billion, the equivalent of what we are getting for this IMF program, right? In terms of some of the stored
of which we've received about $2 billion. Of which, if I remember.
Yes,
please.
yes. But the entire quantum is what I am referencing. And then you are looking at the contracts awarded to the tune of 194 billion cedis, which we are going to have to contemplate as well. Add that to the fact that, of course, you want to uncap the GET Fund and do a number of things with that. You are looking at the Akosombo Dam spillage victims. You've spoken about that. The Kitu South situation, we've spoken about that. You are uncapping the NHIS levy to free some, 10 billion Ghana cedis. In there, you are then going to make the allocations. You are looking at paying assemblies, assemblymen and women. You are looking at the District Assembly Common Fund, also the allocations from there, 1.5 billion to Agric, including the Nkoko Nkiti program and all of that. We've said a lot, but just paint a very simple picture to the ordinary Ghanaian. How will all of this be executed? How will you be able to balance the books and achieve all of this?
No, the simple picture I want to paint is that the minister did not start with costs. The minister started with revenues. And he showed the revenue measures. And he showed the amount which we are going to attempt to generate, right? All that you have listed are allocations of that revenue. And this is where the tax reforms become very important. This is where, by mid-year, the rationalization of the VAT becomes very important, right? To go to Parliament, rationalize it, make it, in fact, the VAT is described as the fiscal engine machine for generating, resources, right? So I just want to remind the audience that these are allocations, right, of what the minister said we are going to generate, which means that they are not outside the budget. What he has done is to move some expenditures from here to the other. So, for example, yes, the center may not receive, the DACF that is capped at the center, right? But it is going to lead to development. Who knows? It may lead to our issuance of, in the medium term, our issuance of municipal bonds, because globally...
Municipal what?
Municipal bonds. That's borrowing against the DACF to do, you know, projects. Yes.
Okay.
Just as we borrowed against, you know, airport tax to do Terminal 3, we borrowed against, you know, the oil revenue, the pipelines, deprive ourselves of immediate consumption of those, you know, used into consumption to build the pipeline. The same way we escrowed the same oil revenues and later were to escrow the power that is sold from a Chuabo to build a Chuabo and the rest, right? So we are going to come back into these smart borrowing, self-financing schemes for major infrastructure. But a reminder, again, let me remind the public that the minister is not listing these things outside the budget. And as
they are all within the budget.
Exactly. And you have a media review. And I believe he will not hesitate if, God forbid, some calamity comes and we cannot, you know, we cannot achieve the revenue target. But we hope that we can achieve it with the revenue reforms and things that we're talking about. So again, to repeat, these are not outside the budget. These are allocations of the budget.
Right.
And trading, sometimes, the central government taking too much money from the statutory funds, putting them back for them to play their role. So, for example, when we say, you know, that we would push for completion of, say, the E-blocks, when we say that we will meet, you know, some free SHS promises and the rest, the capping that was done, we are going to generate revenue, traditional revenues, for the center, and let the GET fund play its role. So it's a reallocation of resources.
Realignment. And he talks about, in that regard, an additional 4.1 billion Ghana cedis, specifically for free SHS on the back of that uncapping. But you still have the school feeding, 1.788
the budget
billion. I'm just reiterating.
Yeah.
You have to plug the US aid deficit, which he spoke about. You are giving 300 million to the National Apprenticeship Program, 100 million to the Ejumara program. I'm talking CDs. You are providing free textbooks to students. The first years at the tertiary
these are all allocations.
You are also going to deal with all of those within the period.
Yes, these are all allocations. But remember also, and I think it's important for me to stress this point, that the budget revenue is not covering all expenditure, and therefore the minister said we are going to borrow prudently. And luckily for us, the TB rates have dropped. Hopefully, we'll finish the negotiations, you know, with the external creditors, and we may be able to get back to the markets and borrow, but borrow with a repayment fund so that we don't default.
Right.
Yes.
How much are you hoping to borrow in 2025 as a government?
Sorry, he gave the figure. Let's see.
We'll quickly get into that bit and find out what the estimates are that.
Yes, I need to go to the table.
Government is hoping to borrow as far as.
Okay, sorry, I've opened the page.
Is that the?
Yeah, if you have the budget, it's on page 128. Those who have, you know, the budget, I think it's on the websites now. So financing is 60. Sorry. 2020, that's 2024 budget, sorry. We need to 2025.
So we'll get into those details. We need to get those specifics, and then we shall take it from there.
Okay, so 2025 budget, if I may just...
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, 2025, you know, budget, we are looking to generate revenues of 224.9 billion, about 225. Expenditure is going to be 281, which already you see 222 plus 281. So you are running into the deficit. And then
that's about almost 60 billion deficit.
Yes, actually, after it's calculated here as 48 overall non-commitment basis. So overall, it's about 50.
I don't have the specific figure. I know it was around 50. I know it was around 50 in essence.
It's 56. Okay, I'm reading from the table. And therefore, financing is the 56.9, so about 57 billion, is going to be borrowed. And then, but here we have made provision for repayment, what we call amortization. So this new borrowing will bring down, the balance, of what we and it's going to come from foreign and from domestic, sources, right? And then we are going to repay, and this is what we need to ramp up. In 2025, because of the constraints, it's going to be 9.126, and also the benefit of the debt suspension. But it is going to go up, in 2026 to 43.7, and then 2027 to 58, and then go down in 2028 to 47. So the increases are the result of the what we call the humps.
Okay.
The debt suspension that are going to fall due, which we have to.
All right. I want us to quickly, I would be remiss if I didn't address the 24-hour economy issue. But let me first deal with the Hajj village and the cost, of course, since the budget itself did not. So I just want clarity on that point. No state funds are going into the Hajj village, like directly from the state's kitty. And I'm sure you know why I am hammering on this point, because we were told same about the National Cathedral, and before we realized it, about $50 million had gone in there. What is the real situation with the Hajj?
I don't think we have the experience of a major project. For example, when we say that Terminal 3 will pay for itself, people doubted, but Terminal 3 is paying for itself. When we say that the gas processing plant will pay for itself, it's paying for itself, or it's supposed to be paying for itself, unless there's a
Seteke, just clarify for me. The Hajj village is not going to be paid for by the state. It is,
and remember,
it is Ghana Airport Company Limited. And these funds eventually will come back to the Ghana. It will be self-sustaining, self-paying.
Because remember, it's a complex which, after Hajj, will serve airport purposes, other purposes.
It will serve other purposes.
Of course, you can't just close
so after the Hajj.
The complex. Yeah. Right. So you use it for, alternative. Remember, there will be, food joints and other things, because it's meant to serve a Hajj. For maybe a month.
So is the GACL's money that will go into this?
Yes, to go into it, and it will be the facility will be used to complement.
Okay.
The airport, and so I think we could come back when I have seen how it is going to be self-financed.
Maybe a final point I would want us to look at, the 24-hour economy.
Yes.
Some people feel not enough was said about it. In fact, at the SONA, President Mahama referenced that come the budget, we'll get more flesh to the bones of the 24-hour economy. We didn't get flesh exactly, did
we want to come back with a comprehensive picture, but it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Let me give you two examples, right? If you drill down into the budget for certain ministries, there are traditional things that the budget always allocates funds. Street lighting, right? You can't do a night economy without lighting, right? So if you go into the Ministry of Roads, right, budget, some of which was mentioned, right, are solar street lights contributing to 24-hour economy? Yes, they are, right? Let's go to the health sector quickly. If you want the hospitals and the rest, to work, it's a program of allocation of traditional, resources for making Ayalulu buses more efficient, right? So that the hospital would work. Is it serving a 24-hour economy? Are there provisions for repairs that are made in the budget, to maintain, theaters and the rest, are they contributing to 24-hour economy? So there are those low-hanging fruits, right? But when you get to big ones, for example, one efficient way of making sure that a 24-hour economy works is, which I can give, is to complete, the railway projects and batch the goods, right? And then they move on the water link to the terminal points, up north, right? Maybe do an extension of a railway line that will take the goods, by rail to Burkina Faso and the rest, so that at least when we build roads, these are cheaper ways of moving containers and the rest, right? These are integral parts of lending, borrowing, traditionally, but they serve a 24-hour, purpose, right? So I just want to remind Ghanaians that the 24-hour does not mean that, there will be no use of existing. In fact, the efficient use of resources, for example, the DSCF that we're talking about, right? What does the DSCF do? DSCF does infrastructure, at the district level. And there they are going to be fixing lorry parks. They are going to be fixing, almost every district capital has some night market, to it. So it is, when we ask that will come back, just like the VAT, we just want to add the bigger ones which are more, into the medium term. Because this is a commitment. It's not something that's going to happen temporarily. Right. Yes.
Setekwe, my final bit to you, and we're wrapping the conversation here. So your final words. The finance minister hoisted a horseman bag or case, and suggesting also that we should consume made in Ghana, looking at how much we spend on many items in terms of our import bill.
Yes.
What's the plan? And the minority also said that there was no hope emanating from this budget. If there's hope emanating from this budget, this is the time you can look at the people of Ghana and address them. Over to you. Those will be my final.
If we are able to, and we will, take the country out of the gloom of haircuts and other things, and restore gifts, restore items, restore the very things which were suspended for 8 years, I can bet that those will begin to bring hope to Ghanaians.
And how do we focus more on Ghana and consume what we produce?
That's the point we're making. So if we produce pens, why import pens? There are companies that are producing. If we produce, the bag that the minister was holding, if we produce school bags,
But what systems are you putting in place to enhance that? That's what I'm asking.
I spoke about the tax systems, the protection of local industry, making sure that we check smuggling and other, and then, as I said, some allocations to ministries and the rest who would champion. By the Ministry of Education, there's a lot. The Ministry of Education alone, there are fertilizer plants, Ministry of Agric. Do we always have to be importing? Yes, so for as long as they are beyond our capacity, but we need to be ramping up, our domestic production of, and this is where private sector comes in as a partner to government.
Setekwe, we're grateful for your time with us this morning. It's always, surgical when you come into the studio. And it's been good having you join the conversation. Setekwe is a former Minister of Finance. He was Minister of Finance between 2013 and early 2017, thereabouts. And of course, he is also presidential advisor on the economy. Let me tell you about the Ishmael Yamson and Associates Business Roundtable 2025. Every year, thousands of Ghana's brightest minds seek better prospects abroad, leaving a gap in our workforce. The question, how can Ghana inspire its talent to stay? Join David Ofosudote, Professor Mary Setrana, and Their Excellency Dr. Amina Gurib Fakim, a former president of Mauritius, at the 12th edition of the Ishmael Yamson and Associates Business Roundtable to discuss managing the talent exodus, leveraging private-public partnerships for growth. The date is the 7th of May, 2025. The venue, the Labadi Beach Hotel. The time is 9 a.m. To register your attendance, text your name and organization to 0530 117 202. Or you can send an email to info@ieyamson.com. That is IEYAMSON.com. We're taking a breather. We'll be back with more Action Tuesday. Welcome back on the AM show, and we're going to be discussing something exciting, spectacular, in fact, when it comes to cinematics. But before we get into that, let me tell you about a solar system, if you're thinking of getting any. Select a solar system from our various solar packages ranging from 30,000 cedis to 99,000 cedis. And note that all our solar systems come with lithium-ion batteries, so they are long-lasting. You could also get a solar water heater, a solar home system, a solar-powered station, or a solar generator ranging from 1,000 to 20,000 watts. And guess what? That's not all. We also sell reverse osmosis machines for water treatment. Which entity am I talking about? SolarMate Ghana. So just Google them, Solar Mate Ghana. Find them on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also call them on 0508 320 470. 0508 320 470. Solar Mate Ghana is located at Adregano, East Legon. And Solar Mate, you know, we go everywhere. Now, joining us, imagine getting a ticket, but it's one way. You would contemplate getting a return ticket. Right? Well, I'm going to be discussing something exciting. A movie titled The Return Ticket with Stephanie Boateng. She's director and filmmaker. And we also have Wavy Jones, I like his name already, as a hip-hop filmmaker. Both of them join the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The return ticket.
Yes, the return ticket.
What if I want a one-way flight?
Well, I mean, that's what I bought on the way here, so.
That's what
we got.
But tell me, this project, this whole project, the return ticket, how did it start? Even before I get to Wavy and how he got into movie making when he never really had trained to be an actor, right?
Never, yeah.
But let me start with you. How did this project start?
So me and Wavy, we've been friends for years. Met him when I was living in LA, and we've just been always, stayed close, stayed in touch. And last year we shot a documentary in Canada when he was shooting for a series called The Good Doctor.
Okay.
The documentary is called Be Inspired, really just inspiring creatives and just, to push forward on the journey based on Wavy's journey. And we was talking about doing another project together, and the return ticket came up. Never been to Ghana before, but also it's somewhere I've always wanted to continue to shoot and showcase like global African films.
Put the spotlight here.
Definitely, 100%. And so, yeah, we conceptualized it together and just came up with it, and now we're here.
Okay, so since I have, these folks in the studio, I mean, just wait for his voice, yeah? I heard his voice and I did a bit of mimicry as far as his voice was concerned. Wavy, what's up?
What's up, man? How are you?
I'm okay. So you played the Notorious B.I.G.
I did.
And you'd never done any acting in the past. This was just an audition?
Yeah.
You auditioned?
Yep. I tried for the audition. They flew me out to test for the role. Then they called me back and was like, you're our guy. So, yeah, I've been acting ever since, man.
Know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay, so, and you've done a number of things. Just walk us through some of what you've done before coming to, the return ticket.
I've done the show on ABC, The Good Doctor. I did the 7th season of that. I did See You Yesterday, that's on Netflix. I did The Madness on Tubi. Man, the list goes on. Yeah.
And you've been doing it for quite a number of years now.
It's like 2017 now.
Wow. So that's about some 8 years.
Yeah.
What has it been like?
Oh man, it's been a lot of joy. I can say that. It's been
a lot of kwacha too, right?
Yeah. We need that.
Paper.
We need that. Yeah, we need that. So it's been a lot of paper. It's been a lot of just moving around and getting into this whole filmmaking thing. And I was like, yo, when Steph called me and was like, she wanted to do this and bring it back to Ghana because I believe there was a call in 2019 for that, for African American.
The year of return.
Home. Yeah.
Right.
So I was like, well, let's go out there and film.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've listened to ace actors, the Denzels and others who have always spoken about why they would take a specific project and not take another project. What made you, beyond the camaraderie, beyond knowing Stephanie, what made you want to be on the return ticket?
I always wanted to come to Africa.
So this is your first time in Africa?
My first time in Africa. Always wanted to come here, and when she called me and said that because she's from, like her family is from Ghana, so I always wanted to come here, and I felt like this story was something that would inspire a lot of people, and we want to bring a lot of people home, so we're here to doing it first.
Stephanie, now this project is a big one. Just how big is it? What is your audience? What are you trying to achieve with this project?
I definitely want to reach out to a global audience. I want to, first of all, showcase how much talent we have on the ground here, especially Ghana, Africa overall, but definitely Ghana because I think sometimes we get underlooked. And so for me, I want to be able to stream it everywhere, US, UK, Europe, Africa. I want to be able to reach, a lot of markets with this, which is why the distribution is important in terms of the streaming platform we choose as well. But I also want to definitely do a cinema release out here in Africa and just give us a chance to shine in, all our glory on the continent. So for me,
we're going to shine in our own space.
100%, yeah.
Showcase what we've got.
Exactly.
No stereotypes, just us doing our
just
thing.
us, yeah.
But tell me, so you talk about streaming services. I know you've not really decided yet, but what are you aiming at? Which platforms? Are you looking at Netflix, for example? What's the ambition when this is done?
I mean, we definitely won't, count anyone out at this stage because we're still definitely continuing to see our options in terms of just between us, who we know, who I know as well. So yeah, Netflix definitely can be an option. You have Amazon, Hulu, but I also want to make sure that we as an audience here has access to it. And I know some places, platforms like don't have access to everyone in Africa as well. So I think that's also very important what we're doing as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
And before I come back to you, Wavy, this film also features some juggernauts, if you like, in our local setup. Ajite Anang, we used to watch Ajite Anang from way back when he was pushing stuff. Pusher. And you also have an ace when it comes to rap, in Ghana, Reggie Rockstone. Tell us about some of those who are going to feature on this project.
Ajite Anang, as you said, you said it all about him. Great work. And I came to Ghana and did a lecture, or more so kind of like a masterclass in a university. That's where me and Ajite connected. And from there, I just was like, he's someone that I definitely see in this film. So I reached out to him. And everyone else that we want to feature in is more so kind of like cameos, people that we feel would be, make it feel like Ghana, especially because the background of the character is a musician. So we want to, add some music in there as well and add people in there that are key people in the music industry. So there's people I've connected with just from working with them out here as well. And yeah, just want to see whoever's wanting to be involved, really.
Wavy, how do you see yourself fitting into this? First time in Africa, you're working with all of these Africans, even your trajectory getting into acting. How do you see yourself fitting into this beyond the fact that you're black and, you're in here?
Oh, I feel right at home. One thing, coming to Ghana when we first got here, I was like, man, there's black people on the money. Like, this is where we need to be at. And when Stephanie started connecting me with Fifi Jefferson and Ajite Anang and everybody and start telling me more of the history about what's going on in Ghana, I'm like, man, this is the place that, I'm happy to film something at. So this is going to be totally different from everything else that I've filmed.
Yeah. And your expectations in the end?
I don't have no expectations, brother. I just want to actually let's get it in the can. Let's film it, let's get it in the can, and let's let everybody just see the beauty of Ghana. Yeah.
With what you've seen here so far, is it a place you'd want to come back to? Is it a place that when you go back to the States, you would like to tell people about?
Absolutely.
Preach the message of Ghana.
Absolutely. I want to do that. But I also want to come back here and build. I feel like it's a place that us as just people of color can really come back here and build. We was talking to Professor Carby the other day, just the history and everything that he was telling us. I was like, man, like this is where I want to be. So I definitely gonna go back to the States. I'm very much humbled from everything that I've witnessed out here and experienced, and I just want to go back and with a message of what's going on out here in Ghana.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Stephanie, here we are. What should our viewers know about what's next for the return ticket? What's the plan? Timelines? When are you hoping to wrap up on this, and when do we get to see the final thing?
So many great questions. Yeah, we definitely want to shoot in the summer, so we're gearing ahead to shoot in the summer. Right now, we're continuing to fundraise because this is independent film. So right now, that is kind of like the main thing, as well as continuing to develop the story and using a lot of what, Wavy's personal experience to put in the film. Yeah. The aim is to really bring Africans together all over the globe. So that's my aim within film. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter. As long as you consider yourself African, I want to work with you. I want to be a part of, this network and just showcase film with everyone, all over the globe. So for me, yes, I was born in London, but I consider myself Ghanaian, and I want to bring people in from all over, to be part of it. In terms of the timeline, hopefully we can, wrap up with, post-production towards the end of this year. And yeah, we're just kind of going with what we have right now, and had an idea, went with it, and we're here now. So just continuing to continue that journey.
All right, Wavy, final words. Do you rap?
I do rap.
Okay, I consume a lot of rap music, so...
Yeah. What's up?
I'm not asking you to rap. I'm not going to put you on the spot.
All right.
I nearly asked you to do something from the Notorious B.I.G., but for now, that's in the past. We're doing the return ticket. Are you going to be singing anything on the movie?
Definitely. We're going to do some music in there. I think we're going to add that in there because we're going to add the elements what we got in the U.S. as far as the hip-hop culture and everything like that, and we're going to see what else Ghana has, and we're going to put it together and make a great film.
All right.
And we have an event, actually, this Sunday called Meet Me at the Garden.
Meet Me at the Garden,
for networking socials for filmmakers. Africa Movie Box is a platform that I'm part of, co-CEO of, and we basically are organising this event to just bring out filmmakers from all over. To come and just chill, hang out, and support.
Are movie watchers invited?
Yeah.
We don't make movies, we watch them. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
thanks for coming.
Thanks for having
And
me.
that's Stephanie Boateng,
you.
director and filmmaker. Of course, it's all about the return ticket.
Yeah.
And then there's Wavy Jones. He's a hip-hop filmmaker. Both of them join the conversation. Well, before we take your calls, get ready. Pick up your phone. We'll be activating the phone line shortly. Ghana, let's talk water tanks. Do you know the secret to real water storage? It's simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it's not the correct tank. That's right. The tortoise tank, Syntex tank, is the champion of water tanks. It is strong, durable, and built to handle our Ghanaian weather. Rain or shine, Syntex tank has your back. So my people, go outside, check your tank, look at it. If it doesn't have the tortoise on it, it's time to upgrade. Join the Syntex tank family today and enjoy water storage that's tough, like a tortoise. Call 0244 335 168 to buy now or find one of our 400 agents nationwide. You can also shop online at syntexgh.com. You know what it is? Syntex tank, strong, tough. Well, call that number now, 0302 211 691. We are waiting your calls on the budget, the economy, Seth Tekpe's words, and everything in between. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back. This last segment is for you. What are your thoughts? We have Richard from Obuasi. Richie, good morning.
Good morning, Benjamin.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. And you?
By God's grace, I'm well. We have limited time. We want to, in about 6 minutes, knock off. Straight to the point.
For me, I was expecting the finance minister to talk more about the taxes at the port. I didn't hear much about the taxes at the port, especially the import duty on vehicles. You know, before the budget, your reporters were at the Putukai talking to vehicle dealers. I mean, their concerns were import duties on vehicles, making vehicles very expensive.
Right.
I'm a driver, and I'm involved in the transportation business. I know what is going on. Benjamin, for the past 3 years, people cannot buy vehicles in the country. It's as simple as that.
Right.
You cannot buy vehicles. Vehicles are so unaffordable. They are so expensive. And the total fee, which used to be like 25,000, less than 30,000, is now 100,000 plus. The EU matches was less than 20,000. It's now 100,000, almost 100,000. I mean, it's just...
It's a killer, right? It's a killer. And I get the point you're making. Thank you, Richard, for calling from Obuasi. Very valid point you made. But when I had Seth Tekpe here, he made mention, it's just skipped my mind, but he mentioned some components which would help soak up some of the import duties, as per what he shared here with me. But these are conversations that we're going to continue having so that everybody can understand essentially how this is going to impact them over time. Of course, it will not be immediate, the effect. You can call 0302-211-691. We have George in Doma. George, good morning.
Good morning.
George, what are your thoughts for us?
I'm happy Mama really started this practice. And I would like to encourage you to about the payment.
George, I'm struggling to hear you.
Yeah, I said
Uh-huh.
I'm happy my was published taxes.
Okay.
And about the movie, I would like to see someone like Lemican English rap music in the movie.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. He was making reference to the return ticket as well. It's interesting. You've spoken about the economy. You've spoken about that as well. So thank you so much for calling and sharing your thoughts. Who's going to be our next caller? 0302 211691. 0302 211691. Eh, because they be a man of Monfre, a man a day, Monfre, eh? Ne man I can work with no person will be ana. Aha, you forced me to speak P like my ship. Please, I want some of the ladies to also call. Maybe we have about 2-3 minutes, so some of you can call and share your thoughts. But in the interim, okay, so we have Alhaj in Medina. Good morning.
Yes, good morning, my brother. How are you doing?
I am well. I hope you are too. What are your thoughts?
Very well. The NDC and the TEPE, I don't know. In this your platform, always when the TEPE, when President Mama and the NDC were in opposition, the TEPE was saying some things that the other government, the other past government did not do well. And today, the TEPE, again, this budget that they have just read it to us. And the TEPE is saying what? Think today we are not going to measure anybody with anything. What the cost of vehicles, our in out or what is it, or the prices in the market. That is where we are talking about the budget. Nobody will sit in there or in his office and tell Ghanaians this is how the budget will look like. Because now things are dipping. Everything that you are going to buy today, you buy it today, 10 minutes later, you come back and ask the fee. It has increased. So please, your boy and I about it. Please, they should be up and doing because things are getting worse. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us, Alhaj. Maybe we can do one more call and then it's done. And hopefully it's a lady. Hopefully it's a woman who calls. 0302 211691. But let me tell you about Waylead Properties. They are, of course, sponsoring the AM show, ensuring that we can bring you this show every weekday morning. If you want to make any crucial investments, you should look for Waylead Properties. There's Fafa from Dansuman. Yay! You just made my day, Fafa. Good morning.
How are you doing?
All right. Fafa, what are your thoughts for us this morning?
Okay, so just a top up.
Fafa, please speak up for me.
Okay, so the budget I think is, but you see, Ghana has right?
You say Ghana
Hello,
has what?
Ghana has over constituencies, if I'm right.
276, yes.
Okay, so let's put it this. We are tired of on tomatoes from other grains. So if this 2020 has three major plants in Ghana, what is enough?
Oh, Fafa, the line is quite a challenge. Can you just reposition yourself briefly? I really want to hear everything you're saying before you go. Don't go, Fafa. Just reposition yourself and let's try again. You said something about the cost of tomatoes in the constituencies. Can you land on that?
Hello.
Yes. I can hear you.
So, just last week, I went to Mola, and the price of tomatoes
it has gone up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, same with Medina. So I'm just looking at the that we have in Ghana. If at most consistency can 4 or 3 major cash plans in their constituency, it will be enough. But it has without the cost So
you are saying maybe if we could grow maybe 4 of these components in each constituency, it would help the constituencies, right?
Yes.
Okay. I now get at the point you're making. And Fafa, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you called. I wanted a female to call. I wanted a woman to call. You have called and you've made my day. But that's how we're going to wrap up the show this morning. We call it the AM Show. You wake up to us, and of course, we're here to serve you. My name is Benjamin Akako. Thank you for watching. Up next, we serve you Joy News Desk. Do stay.